Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reisch, and this is Crime Talk. And tonight, we are coming to you from the hangar of Crime Talk 1, a.k.a. as sometimes the lovely Miss Kristen refers to it as, the ultimate man cave. A work in progress, I must note. But and also tonight, we have another guest for our Crime Talk Tuesday night after hours, and let's just get comfortable. All right, let's just take off the tie. Let's put the tie there so it doesn't get dirty. And for those of you who don't recall, Mark was with us a month ago or so?
Yeah, it was about a month ago.
Yeah, so Mark joined us about a month ago. We had a lot of people tune in, a lot of positive comments about Mark and doing what he does. It was a lot of people said it was very educational about what private investigators do, what they don't do, etc. And so I've known Mark, what did we say, 15 years or something like that?
About 15 years, yeah.
About 15 years. I trust him because you have to have an investigator that you can trust to make sure the work's going to get done on time. And as I've said this before, that most cases do not turn on the law. They turn on who can find the best facts in a case. So we invited Mark back. He graciously agreed to join us. And we thought, hey, you know what? Last time we mentioned we should have a cigar when we do this. And we smoked indoors years and years and years ago. At the office. I was upstairs, had a friend who was a victim of a serious crime, talked about his experience as a crime victim, but he also used to own a cigar store. So he went through and we talked about it. But let's just say the landlord, I don't think, was pleased with the odor of alcohol or odor of cigars that were there. I'm not a big drinker, but we should have an ATF hour sometime, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Maybe separate the alcohol and the firearms.
Exactly. Oh yeah, that would have to be the last part of it.
Exactly, yeah. Firearms first, alcohol last.
So anyway, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Why don't you just give a quick little bio about yourself, just to kind of give everybody an update. Obviously, like, you're an investigator, you work for me and lots of other people as well. You don't just work for me.
I started as a police officer in the mid-'90s. I was a police officer, detective, patrol officer, and then detective sergeant. So all that together was 11 years. I left and started this business 16 years ago. And, been doing it ever since. And I like it.
And we've had some good adventures as well. I mean,
yes.
I remember one night meeting you at the airport. I don't know, it was like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock flight. We got into California, like 2, 3 a.m. or something like that. I was coming from a dinner. I don't think I had time to go home and change like I anticipated.
You had nothing with you but a briefcase.
I had a briefcase and the suit that I had on.
Yeah.
We were looking for a witness, and I think we literally knocked on the door, called, and she's like, "You're here?" She refused to talk to us, and she's like, "But you came all this way just to talk to me?"
Yep.
Yes, we did. It was a homicide case, if I recall.
Yep.
And she wound up talking to us for, an hour or two or something like that?
Yeah, and we turned around, drove straight to the airport, and flew back.
Yeah, in the same suit that I wore the night before, because things went a little long, and I was like, I just don't have time to do it. I got to get to the airport. And it was like the last flight. Didn't we fly into Ontario, California, I think?
Oh, no, I think we flew into LAX, didn't we?
Yeah. And then we've flown it. Remember, we another case, we had to go down and pick up our expert down in Oklahoma. And in the Crime Talk 1.
Yep.
And then we went up to Minnesota, wasn't it?
Yeah, we went to Minneapolis. Yep.
Minneapolis, Minnesota, yeah. And dodging those thunderstorms. I remember that too.
We even had a blowout when you were taking off.
Yeah. We're taxiing.
Yeah.
We're taxiing down the taxiway in Norman, Oklahoma at this little airport, but it was close to where our expert lived.
Yep.
So he didn't have to drive. But it was a Sunday, and there were no services whatsoever. So you had a lawyer, an investigator, and an engineer. Like, how do we get the plane back? It's
like a bad riddle.
And he was an engineer, and he's like, hold on, I'll be back in like 15 minutes.
Yep.
Came back, comes up with some sort of contraption to get the plane back, and we got the tire fixed the next day, and then we flew off.
Yep.
Crazy time. Wow. Wow, my eyes look really red because that light's shining on me. Wow. And it's got the Jeep in the back. This is also the storage lot for excess cars. That's my son's Jeep in the background over there. It's a 2007. Not that anybody really cares, but 2007 with like 52,000 original miles on it. I get offers on it all the time. It's got a new top on it, new tires, new wheel. And normally we put the Porsche here, but we had so many people in town we had to keep cars. So
rearrange.
It's completely useless. But I love it. I love it. And when I bought it, I was like, oh, I'm going to rent it out, and but it's so nice just to have your own thing. So anyway, enough about that. So Mark and I said we were going to have a cigar. I don't know if you need a cutter.
Already cut.
All right. Let me light this bad boy up here and have a cigar. Hopefully won't offend too many people by having a cigar this evening, but I just figured, this will get the evening relaxed, so to speak, and we'll see how things go. Obviously, we have lots to talk about in the crime world, the things that are going on. Specifically, today we talked about Ghislaine Maxwell wants to not fight the release of the John Does that she's basically said they should remain anonymous and their names shouldn't be released whatsoever. It's interesting that she's saying, the hell with it. You guys don't care about me. I don't care about you. Which,
can't blame her.
The threat of imminent incarceration tends to break the bonds of loyalty, right?
Boy, how often do we see that?
All the time. We talked today, there was a case about the Louisiana habitual offender statute. And a guy, he had a couple priors, all drug-related stuff, minor stuff. But he had a conviction. A buddy of his had bought from him, because he was working as a confidential informant, 2 $20 bags of marijuana. He was offered 5 years. He said, "Screw that! I'm going to prison. I'm going to trial. He's my best friend. He was not going to show up and testify against me." I'm like, "Of course he is. He's cooperating. He's a confidential informant. He's already beyond that. He sold you out, dude. He sets you up." So yeah, people don't get that. Literally, like I said, the people, I've seen family members sell out family members. I'm sure you've.
I was literally this afternoon talking with an attorney about a case that we had previously, and the guy insisted on going to trial. The key witness was his estranged wife, and he said, "She will never testify against me." He had no concern in the world. Over probably 6 months, we kept saying, "Are you sure?" We went to trial, and she walked right up there, and his mouth was wide open. I mean, you could have driven your plane, and he was flabbergasted that she showed up to testify against him. So it's just like the code on the street that nobody will talk, nobody wants to be a snitch. It's amazing when they're confronted with criminal charges, how quickly they change their mind.
They roll, and they roll quickly and
thoroughly.
And then, I mean, they're literally like, if they're in the bottom end of the pile, so to speak, and somebody's higher up, and they're going to send me to prison for this? Like, screw that, right? I mean, they're just not going to do it. But if your buddy's setting you up as a confidential informant, he's already sold you out. I mean,
right.
It's like, dude, he's not your buddy, and he's showing up for court.
Yep.
And so I get it. Sending a guy to life without parole for $40 worth of marijuana seems a little excessive, but it's the kind of situation where it's like, dude, you were advised. Everybody knows better than the attorney. I was advised clients, you must assume everybody is going to show up, right? How many times have we seen in domestic violence cases over the years? She's not showing up. Mm-hmm. She's not going to show up. Okay, you better keep her happy.
Well, and a lot of times all it takes is the judge just saying, under threat of contempt of court, if you don't show up for a subpoena, you can be arrested. Bench warrant can be issued. Sometimes that's all it takes.
Yep. But people never think. I had a case years ago. It was bad. Bad. And the guy kept saying, she's not showing up. It was a daughter. Wasn't going to take any deals. I'm like, she's going to show up. Like, your ex-wife has done everything to protect you or protect the daughter. She's not here for you. And what happened? Literally, they opened the door, call the next witness. Here comes the witness. And I literally look at him and I'm like, I told you so, you know? And so when you're going down for a lengthy little stretch here, you can't say I didn't tell you so because I told you so. But nobody ever thinks it's going to do it. They all think they're smarter than everybody else.
And it really amazes me when it's, you know, they're buddies on the street, they're gang members, whatever. They're so convinced that there's no way those people would ever roll on them. And 100% of the time, they roll on them.
Yeah, all that stuff about talking on, you know, snitches end up in ditches, all that kind of good stuff. That is the exception to the rule.
Yes.
The police talk to everybody. Everybody talks to the police because they're giving them a little bit of info because they're trying to hedge their bets that maybe someday if I get in trouble, well, maybe remember I gave you that little piece of information. And if I get in trouble, I can call Sergeant so-and-so. And
that never works either.
And that never works either because, you know as well as I do, the police have absolutely no authority whatsoever in making charging decisions like that, and whether cases are going to get filed as well. So,
that's one of the things that always strikes me about the police shows on TV is it makes it look like the cops have so much authority about who gets charged and who doesn't. And I guess they could choose not to arrest somebody and then not even create an offense report and, you know, and try to file it with the DA's office. But I guess short of that, you know, they have almost zero say in who gets charged.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to the district attorney. Yeah. I mean, at some point they're going to have to present that case, or they have to explain why it's been sitting on their desk for 2.5 years.
Yep.
And they better have a pretty good reason for it.
Well, and that's why, you know, you were talking about confidential informants. That's why, you know, we always push so hard to try to uncover the identity of confidential informants and identify them to see what's their benefit from this.
Yep.
You know, a lot of times it's cash, but even more often it's working off charges.
That's usually it.
Yeah.
You're working off charges, particularly on narcotics cases. Mm-hmm. But then if somebody's really connected, they can, they can literally get paid. They can get a percentage of what they bring in. I cross-examined a snitch in federal court once where this guy he had been paid like $200,000 by the feds to set up drug cases.
Wow.
Unbelievable. I mean,
make a living doing it.
It's always, well, that's the thing. The guy really wasn't working. I mean, he had a little job, but his main source of income, his real money was setting up deals for the police.
You know, and most of those, like the cases that we see from drug task forces and stuff, they're confidential informants. If they're working for cash, it's not very much cash. It's $100 here and $250 there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not much.
People who, they get charged and they're like, man, they wouldn't sell me out. I'm like, dude, they sold you out. And then they find out that they got sold out for like $100,
right.
Or they worked off a petty little shoplifting case or something,
Yep.
Something petty, minor.
Yep.
But that just shows you, it's like, dude, this is what this guy, your friend, thought you were worth. I mean, there's no, there used to be loyalty amongst thieves kind of deal.
No,
not anymore.
Well, and that's how most of those, a large percentage of those drug task force cases get started is they're watching a house because they've had intel, and they just wait until they see somebody drive away, and they pull them over, and they've got $20,
yep.
Worth of meth or something on them, and for that relatively minor felony, right there they start working them as a confidential informant. So that's how little they care about the other person.
Yeah, and this guy may know the guy that sold him an ounce. Well, then they worked the guy that got an ounce because he knew a guy that could get a kilo.
Right.
Who knew a guy who could get multiple kilos. And next thing you know, they're getting wiretaps going all the way to people that are employed by the Mexican cartel.
Yep.
I mean, that's just how it works.
Yep.
They just simply start working those people because everybody knows somebody when you get in trouble.
Yeah, and everybody knows somebody up a little bit higher when you get in trouble. And they often, as we know all too well, they often cross state lines and involves multiple jurisdictions. And
Yep. Let's see tonight what questions that we've got here. Let's see here. No one's got any questions. Tonight's the night if you want to ask questions of me, Frank, Julie, and Mark as well. Otherwise, we'll just sit around and enjoy our cigars and talk about whatever comes to mind, so to speak. How's the cigar smoke there, guys? I mean, you can have one too. I mean, nobody. Oh my gosh, who thinks that Julie should have a cigar?
no peer pressure.
Only if you inhale. Okay. So the other case that we follow a lot on this is the case of Lorivalo. Have you been following that at all?
Which one is that?
That's the one in Idaho where she thought she was a goddess, so to speak, and she had all this power, and her boyfriend was like this master wizard, and basically a couple kids, their kids disappeared, and his wife wound up missing. She's in the loony bin right now.
Weren't they both charged with child abuse resulting in death? Is that
first
the case?
degree murder?
Oh, first degree murder.
For remuneration, and then for the wife as well, because basically allegedly killed her for the insurance money. But followed that a lot. But there was a confidential report that was filed regarding her competency. I think it was yesterday. It was actually filed, whereby state mental health says, we want this sealed because it's got privileged information, which I get it. So the prosecutors, the defense, and the court will obviously get a copy of it. But unless they're bringing her back, I think she's sticking around a lot longer. I mean, you've seen clients that are malingering.
Oh yeah.
But then you've also had the crazy clients, right? Where, and when I say crazy, I mean the not competent, or they are impaired by a mental disease or defect, which doesn't allow them to appreciate the circumstances of what's going on, where they wind up spending, a very lengthy time in, down in Pueblo here in the state of Colorado for our mental health hospital. But those people are pretty good at spotting malingerers, which I imagine the state mental hospital in Idaho is just as good.
I bet there's a lot of that. I would like to know the percentage of ones who they determine are, legitimately there versus the malingerers. I'm sure there's a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of malingering. When the people start saying, "Oh, the voices are talking to me." Oh, really? And when did the voices start? Oh, you've been to law library, I see too, right?
The voices started just after my crime.
The voices started just after I started doing some research and talking about my case in custody with everybody in this pod.
Yeah.
Jody, Mark wants to know, what's the hardest case you ever investigated?
As a police officer or as a defense investigator?
Yeah, let's go both. Hardest case as a police officer.
Serious cases involving children. I mean, those are always hard. When you're there and you see a child that's been, seriously injured or ongoing, assaults or whatever. Yeah. Those are always difficult. As a defense investigator, there's been a lot of them. I got a couple of really bad ones right now. There was.
Don't reveal any attorney-client.
No. I won't.
Just the gist of the case.
Yeah,
generality.
I would say the one that probably bothered me the most was a murder case, and ultimately went to trial. The guy was convicted, got life in prison, but it was just the sort of the. Not really the brutality of it, because all murders are brutal, but it was very cold. I mean, again, I can't go into details, but the way he treated the person before, during, and after was pretty difficult to deal with. That was probably the worst.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the toughest cases are anything involving kids. And as we've said it before, you just want to tell the guys, like, really pick on somebody your own size, right? Like, they're a kid. Like, it's already tough enough being a kid in today's world, and they got to deal with all that crap that comes with it. Somebody inappropriately doing things to them, other people, beating, abusing them, and acting, treating them like they're a piece of property or something along those lines. And obviously you have a duty to represent everybody, but you don't have to like the individual. And you don't, obviously, certainly not condoning what they've done.
Yeah.
But yeah, kids are the toughest. You're just like, really? Like, come on, man.
I still have some friends who are police officers, and some of them and other people, have said to me, how can you represent somebody is guilty, or how can you help represent somebody that has done that? Well, number one, we usually don't know for sure that they've done it. I mean, we have our own beliefs. But number two, and more importantly, is, that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I have to do my job no matter what, and you have to remove your personal feelings about it, or you're not going to do the best job you can. And I think everybody in the system, police, prosecutor, judge, defense attorney, defense investigator, everybody needs to do their job the best they can without emotion. And if everybody's doing that, that's when the system works the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Regardless of the outcome, that's when the system works.
I mean, I remember cross-examining detectives, and they're like, wow, I won't make that mistake again. I'll be looking for that. And that's the way you're supposed to do it. Although right. I had once a detective cross-examined him, and he didn't like, it was a gang racketeering case, and I cross-examined him like, oh, you said my guy's a gangbanger. Oh, well, let's talk about what you do. Oh, they all wear similar clothing. Well, police officers do that. They hang around in groups together. They have their own secret code, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of walked them through that and whatever, and I saw him after the break, I think at lunch, and we're both in the hallway, and I mean, I literally, I think I put my hand out to say, hey, no hard feelings, just doing my job. And he refused to shake my hand at the end of it. And then years later, he got assigned to a task force, and we show up to do a proffer. And who's sitting in the room but that guy? And he just scowls at me. And I was getting along with all the other agents and the U.S. attorneys, and they basically had to tell him, Scott's okay. He's just doing his job.
Well, I mean, honestly, the better you do your job, the better I do my job, the better the police are doing their job. I mean, it's kind of a checks and balances system.
Absolutely.
And that's, kind of what frequently what I'm hired to do is sort of review, I guess, what the police have done and how they've done it. And, were they thorough? Did they miss evidence? Did they miss talking to people? Whatever it is. So, you and I have had a lot of cases where we've looked at it and said, wow, they did a really good job.
Good police work.
There's not a lot we can do. So you just make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and the chips fall where they may.
And I don't want to use his name, but it's out of compliments, but because he's probably one of the greatest detectives that I ever worked with. And he would show up if he made a promise to a particular defendant in a case. He showed up and said, Judge, this is what he's done. This is what he was a great guy.
Wow.
I don't know if you ever worked with him. Joel Humphrey, probably the greatest police detective ever. If something happened to my family, I would call you and Joel Humphreys to work the case. Seriously.
Wow.
That's how good he is. And you saw his name on a case, and you're just like, wow. He's dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. I don't think the man slept. He just worked.
Well, and you see certain names, in 16 years for me doing this, there's certain names you see over and over, especially, major crimes, whether it's Denver Police Homicide Unit or Major Crimes in Aurora, whatever. You see certain names over and over, and you kind of get to know not only with individual people, but even with individual units in police departments or even certain police departments. They just tend to do a better job than some others. And there's a lot of times you kind of, for lack of a better term, can screen the case just based on some of the names that you see.
Some of the names. Yep. There's some cases you look at them, you're like, this has Detective so-and-so. we've got something to work with. He does
Right.
like the worst interviews ever.
Yep.
And then others you're just like, well, we better dot all those I's and cross all the T's,
Yep.
make sure we did everything. But yeah. Mike wants to know, what is a proffer? So a proffer, this is why it's so important when somebody gets in trouble. And obviously we don't want anybody to get in trouble. But if you do, and the police say, hey, why don't you sit down and tell me what's going on, maybe I'll put a good word in for the prosecutor that you were cooperative. Well, that's about all he can do. No charging decision whatsoever. So normally a good attorney, any attorney worth his salt, will say, keep your mouth shut, and the attorney will call up and say, hey, we'd love to talk. Just send somebody over with a proffer agreement, and somebody has authority to sign it, usually the prosecuting attorney. And a proffer means that whatever you tell the police, they cannot use it against you. There's a couple little exceptions to that. If you lie to them and they find out it's not truthful, they can use it for impeachment purposes at trial if you testify to something different. So if somebody goes into a proffer and says, man, I was moving all this weight, I was doing 100 keys a month, and you go to, negotiations break down, you go to trial, and he gets up and says, man, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know how to spell cocaine, let alone how to get it. Then they could use it for an impeachment purpose. The most classic proffer agreement was Monica Lewinsky in her blue dress. Her attorneys got her a proffer agreement so that nothing she said could be used against her. Then they take that information, they go investigate it independently, corroborate it, and then they go forward on it.
Use it against one of the other co-defendants.
Yep.
Yep.
What is the dumbest lie you've ever been told? Wow, where do you begin?
I don't know.
Well, we had a dumb criminal the other day that it was the "that ain't my pants" defense, which is classic. Haven't really heard that one used in a long time. With drugs in it. Man, that ain't my bro. Those aren't my pants.
Were you wearing them?
Yeah. I still think the classic one that you seem to get all the time is I have no idea why my DNA would be inside of a particular person or on a particular person. I have no idea.
Yeah. Or I also like the other one. I started getting more and more cases recently where the person is on an ankle monitor, like pretrial release, GPS monitor, and they've allegedly committed a series of several crimes, and the GPS coordinates on their ankle put them at the scene of every single crime at the time, and they say,
that ain't me, bro.
I was at home with my mom.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, well, we had that guy today. The guy was cruising around a neighborhood. Our dumb criminal of the day was from Florida man, right? And he's cruising around like one of those ATVs, a side-by-side, I think is what they called it. And he looked a little suspicious, but he asked the guy, he was like, hey, can I borrow your outlet so I can charge my ankle monitor? He was supposed to be on house arrest. Nice. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
No.
And, sometimes you wonder, are they stupid, or are they just that arrogant that they think they're going to get away with it, that they can just BS their way out of it?
Well, we've had, I mean, I can think of several clients. I'm not going to mention the names, but we've had several, just you and I, where they always thought they were the smartest person in the room, and they could talk anybody into or out of anything, including the judge or the assistant U.S. attorney or you or me or the police officer. And so sometimes it's arrogance, sometimes it's just stupidity.
Yeah. They just think, we're all a bunch of idiots that, really? Oh. I never would have thought of that. You're the only person in the criminal justice system that has managed to come up with that.
Right.
Everybody will be completely duped by what you have to say.
And the part of it that I never get is, why are you lying to us? We're trying to help you. And, that's always my frustration is when, they're sending me on all these wild goose chases to go investigate something that they know it doesn't exist, that isn't there. I can't help you that way. Like, tell us what really happened.
Yeah.
Then let us figure out what we can do from there to help you.
Yeah, people get scared. They're embarrassed. They don't want to tell their family. They denied it to their family. Their family supports them, and if they change their story, but they'd rather go to their grave or go to prison for the rest of their lives than admit to something that they've that they've done. And
Right.
more than likely, the family would be like, hey, don't really condone what you did, but I guess I'll still love you because you're my family or you're my good friend. But that's just what they do. I've been aware of situations where somebody will say, okay, let me, literally in trial, all right, let me tell you what really happened.
Ugh.
And you're just like, well, I guess now is as good a time as any. I mean, just let me have it.
But how much time do we spend talking to our clients, especially the ones where, you've made the decision that this is going to trial, and we tell them, tell us everything. We don't want any surprises, standing up there in front of a judge, in front of the jury. And, it seems like it's a regular occurrence where, of course, there's the surprise. Why didn't you tell us that?
Yeah. I know it happens all the time. And just be honest with your attorney. Tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because I tell people, like, if I go into court and you haven't told me something that I probably should know, you're probably, I'll try to ask the best of my ability, but sometimes you're the only one that knows the answer to it. And if I go into court and I get my trousers pulled down around my ankles, I'm going to look really silly.
But you're going home.
But I'm going home at the end of the day, and you're probably going to prison.
Yep.
All right, let me see. Terre, T-E-R-E, wants to know what her question is. Okay, let's see. Sarah Teagard. In the Halderson case, the defense hardly cross-examines. Are they waiting for their side to go, or are they they know it's a losing deal? Excuse me. Sarah, it depends. It depends on the witness. Sometimes you will have a lengthy cross-examination. Other times you may say, no questions, because maybe you know that this person has nothing good to say, and maybe the prosecution didn't ask the question. I had a trial not long ago where I was dreading a witness coming to the stand. Dreading. I'm like, they're just going to nail us. It's going to ruin our case. Game over. Prosecution calls the witness to the stand. Whether they forgot to ask or they were going to wait for some dramatic moment for let me cross-examine and then come back on redirect and ask the big question for the big oomph, they never asked it. And so there were a couple things like, the guy didn't hurt me based upon his testimony. And I literally got up and said, no cross-examination. And the prosecutors looked like, what? You're not cross-examining this guy? Because he didn't hurt me. And if you're winning, as judges will tell you, in your argument, you're winning and you haven't said a word. So you want to say something, or do you want to just keep quiet and keep winning? I'm going to keep winning, right? Sometimes the best thing to know is know when not to say something, because it can come back to haunt you for sure. So the Halderson case, for those who don't know, is Mr. Halderson is accused of killing his two parents, chopping them up, scattering them around, burning them in the house. This is I think it's Minnesota, right? Is it Minnesota, Wisconsin? Why do I always get those confused? There's a lot of killing going on up there. I think maybe because it gets cold or something. I don't know. You would think those people would be like the most fit, to deal with like COVID and isolation. We're cold. We're trapped in here together, right? You grew up in that part of the country.
I did. Everybody was wonderful. I wasn't aware of any murders growing up in rural Minnesota. Things may have changed. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't know. So this guy chops everybody up, tries to burn them, and talk about good police work. The cops, somebody says, well, I see a light flickering or something from a security camera. So the cop goes and recreates it kind of exact same time, moon, and they walk through with a little light stick to see if that would be similar to a fire burning, during, good investigation. I think Mr. Halderson is going down hard on this particular case. And we've all been there as a defense attorney, defense counsel, the defense investigator sitting there as well, just thinking, God, today wasn't so bad, but we know tomorrow the beating will continue. It just keeps coming. And you do it. You just do what you got to do. So that's why I think, hopefully that answers your question, Sarah. And was there somebody else that had a question they wanted me to answer that I thought I didn't see? Sorry. If you guys can help me out on Super Chats, they're not showing up here very well. That's, and so, like I said, we'll try to answer as much of your questions, as many as your questions as possible. Yes, you do not have to pay to get your question asked, but it does, I'm not going to lie, it does make it a little easier to see, particularly if I'm paying attention to the computer to see them go by. So let's see here. A lot of them don't know how to spell cocaine. They just say Coke. Well, that's true. But in court, they call it cocaine because it's a little more formal than that. Let's see here. Somebody has Linda says the case is old, but an attorney knew the whereabouts of the deceased child but would not divulge. Client was dead. No answer for parent of child. The attorney's doing the exact appropriate thing to do because it would be a violation of the attorney-client privilege. The attorney-client privilege goes on after the client is deceased, and if the client told you where all the dead bodies are buried, the attorney cannot tell unless he actually has a waiver to do so. And we talked about a case maybe a month or so ago, I think it was. A guy was, I think, on death row, and he signed a formal waiver to have his attorney, upon his death, lead him to the scene where other remains were going to be found. And he did that. But the attorney wouldn't do it unless he had a clear, unequivocal waiver of the attorney-client privilege, because the attorney could, in theory, get grieved because of that.
Is there an exception to the attorney-client privilege if you know the client's planning on committing a crime?
It has to be an imminent threat, right? So under the ethical rules, and I couldn't tell you the exact number right off the top of my head, but normally whatever the client tells you is attorney-client privilege. You can't counsel somebody in how to commit a crime. And if they come to you and say, I am going to go harm somebody right now, and they say, here, look, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And you're like, oh my God, I think he's really going to do it. Then you would have an ethical obligation to contact the police, and I think you would be protected and not be committing an attorney-client privilege violation. But if the client's just like, man, I should do this, he's just venting, I should do this and that, and blah, 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 probably not a legitimate threat at that point. So you couldn't call anybody. Let's see. Someone says, do you like taking depositions? I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've taken several depositions over the years, civil stuff. Not that fun. Just sitting in a conference room asking questions. Kind of boring. In all honesty, I like it when the witnesses refuse to talk to you, and the only time you're going to get to talk to them is on the witness stand, because the judge kind of gives you a little bit of carte blanche. Ma'am, you've spoken with, you know that my investigator, Mr. Carlson, has come to speak with you several times. Yes. In fact, you know that because you've left him a card, right? And he followed up, yeah. And at one point you even called him and said, don't come around here no more. Yes, okay. And so you didn't want to talk with him, but you've talked to the prosecution, and let's talk about when you talked to the prosecution. When was the last time you met with the prosecution to prepare for your testimony? Well, I don't know, yesterday. Oh, really? So how many people were there? Were all these nice, fine district attorneys there and their investigator there? Yep. And what did they do? They go over it. They went over your questions. Did they show you anything? And you just never know where it's going to go. And that's the best time in court, when you just kind of like, okay, now you got to answer my questions. You could have refused to answer that when you were talking to my investigator, or said something else. So yeah, it's let's see, 6 cents a million. So is the ability of your legal representative as important as guilt or innocence? Innocent but crap lawyer, guilty but effective lawyer. I mean, I've won cases I should have lost. I'd like to think it's because I learned a few things along the way. I mean, when I was younger, I thought I knew everything, and then I realized I didn't know anything at all, and I became a much better lawyer when I realized how little I know. And you just learn. You learn by, getting your teeth kicked in every now and then.
And it's not always, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not always a matter of guilt or innocence. Did you or did you not do it? Sometimes it is. But sometimes it's, did the police do everything correctly? Were they thorough? Did they miss things? The quality of their witnesses as much as the quality of our witnesses. So there's been plenty of trials that I've sat through where, we knew that the client did it because of our conversations with him, but
can they prove it?
Right, but they can't. Yeah, they weren't able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
And that's really. And I know it sounds people like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. That sounds terrible. No, that's the law, right?
Yeah.
And really, it doesn't matter if you did it. It's only a question of whether the prosecution can prove it.
Right.
I've had lots of cases dismissed over the years where people were guilty, but they couldn't prove the case, so the prosecution had to dismiss. And I know people don't like that, but that's the way the system works. That's the way it's designed and set up to do, is that, people can, oops, sorry, I don't mean to.
That's right.
It's designed and set up that way so that people, it's just the way it's set up to work.
Yeah, there's plenty of systems around the world where if they think you did it, that's all it takes. Thank goodness this isn't one of them.
Mama Pink says, all of the secrets Scott must keep. Yep. Scott, has there ever been a case you really wanted to talk about but couldn't? Yes. I mean, there's so many cases that but you can't talk about them because then people could find out what case it was, and so it's just better not to talk about them. So you have to talk in very generalities so that you don't tip anything away. I mean, there's some cases that you're like, hey, it's in the newspaper, you can see that. This is what the facts are. I won't go into it. Let the papers speak for themselves. But usually the newspapers get it wrong. I mean, that's one of my little pet peeves as well. Is that you go to a court appearance, the press shows up, and you think, were these people at the same hearing that I was at? Because this is not what took place at all.
Yeah, because the way it's written is incomplete. Or they're trying to get the reader to form a certain opinion. At least that's what I often see.
Yeah. Let's see here. So, Lee Braddock, are you smoking a big fat blunt? No, I'm smoking a Macanudo at the current time. It's a big old cigar Macanudo there. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah.
Could if we wanted to, though. We're in Colorado.
You could if you wanted to, but I stay away from all that stuff. If the draft is ever brought back, would you defend a draft dodger? I would represent anybody. When I was in the military, I represent people they're like, yeah, suddenly I'm a conscientious objector. Okay, my job is to represent you. It's that simple. You represent whomever you're appointed to represent. Lovely Miss Kristen sent me a text. The Jeep is for sale. No, it's not. It's not. No, it's not. Let's see here. Salty, Taggart, better guilty people walk away than innocent people go to prison. That's true.
I agree with
that's
that.
the fundamental principle. It's better that 10 innocent or 10 guilty men walk free than one innocent man be convicted wrongfully. 6 cents, Amelia. The laws are different here. However, evidence is evidence either way. Yes, but it only comes down to admissibility of evidence. We talked about the other night, I don't know if you saw it, was a new opinion that came out. I think it was People v. Rodriguez, but the Court of Appeals ruled Mr. Rodriguez was in a car. He scurried away when the police arrived. They believed that he dropped a baggie containing a white powdery substance. And he went to trial. The lab tech testified that they retrieved it from the evidence locker, tested it. They initialed it like the lab tech people do so that they've established that chain of custody. Well, they didn't bring in the exact officer who booked it into evidence. There was no identifying tag or anything along those lines. And so the court, of course, let it in. Well, it goes to its weight, not its admissibility. He's pretty certain that's the bag. 99% chances that was the bag. But you got to be able to establish that this is the bag that we got from that scene. Officers have to initial the bag. If it's something unique like a firearm or something to that effect, they can say, oh, the serial number is blank, 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 right?
Chain of custody.
Chain of custody. And how many times I've made this argument till I'm blue in the face, and the judges look at me like, that's so cute, Mr. Reisch. That's an interesting argument. But it goes to its weight, not its admissibility. And besides, the prosecutor has brought in an officer who said, that, it's the evidence. But, Your Honor, I cross-examined, I voir dired him before this was admitted, and the officer said he had no idea how this evidence got here today, who checked it in, who checked it out since all these other times, and you show them all the retaping labels on it, like, who's this? All those people should have to come in and testify as to why are there new seals on the evidence bag. And judges just poo-poo that. Well, now, hopefully, with this case, the chain of custody will be looked at with a little more seriousness that it should be taken care of. Because, sometimes that's all you got. Like, judge, they didn't bring the right witness in. You can't, they're not going to be able to prove their case. Not my fault, Judge.
Right.
They screwed up, right?
There's a reason why all those police procedures, are in the policy manual. Every cop knows that's one of the first things you're taught is, how you gather evidence, how you book in evidence. Everybody along the way knows how to do it, knows what they're supposed to do. There's a reason why that's in the policy and procedure manual.
Yep. Let's see here. Lori Barrett. Scott, have you ever had a client say, here, hold this, it's important evidence? Yes, a couple times. But what's the first thing I do? I call the investigator to say, I need you to come down and take possession of this until we can figure out what to do with it, whether we have to turn it over to the police or whether we save it, keep it in a safe place, in a safe, and establish a chain of custody in case we need to admit it into court.
Yeah, and if it's something illegal, certain items we will not take possession of.
Yeah, if something illegal, we can't do that.
Right.
But
absolutely,
if somebody's like, hey, here's something, obviously it was used in the commission of an offense, we can't possess that. We need to ethically turn that over to the police, but I don't want to take possession of it because then I become a witness.
Yep.
So that's why we have an investigator do that. Like I said, I think the last time Mark flew with me was the reason you were there was we had a piece of evidence that was being tested, and you were the guy that was responsible for the chain of custody.
Right. Yep.
Those are the things you have to do. Let's see here. Mullet Mayhem says the same with medication in a hospital. The chain of record is there for a reason. Correct. Jen Lowe, would you ever suggest a client to take the stand? Yes. It depends on the case. Depends on the case. Do they need to testify to get the jury instruction, usually in self-defense? If they're absolutely innocent and have to explain it away, then yeah, they have to do it. I would say I've probably won more cases where the defendant doesn't testify than when they do, because generally then The jury looks at, did they prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt? And they look at the evidence as a totality. When the defendant takes the stand, they kind of look at it as, well, did we believe him? He had beady little eyes. They come up with any reason to discredit them. So I think it always helps. I always try to try a case with the mindset of what evidence can I get through any other witness so that my client doesn't have to take the stand. And some people are very anxious to take the stand. And then when the moment comes down to it, they freak out because they see what the courtroom's like. They see what cross-examination is like. And they're like, oh my God, I just don't do public speaking. I don't do things very well. So if you can avoid that, and I've had people that I thought would be good witnesses and they were just terrified to take the stand. And I truly believe they were innocent, but they just were terrified to do any kind of public speaking at all. And that's a thing. That's a real thing. There was a survey once that was like, what's your worst fear? And number one on the list was public speaking. That was above death.
Wow.
Because some people, it just terrifies the heck out of them. So.
Well, and I know, I've testified a lot. I think even people who are fairly used to testifying, there's still some anxiousness.
Yep. Oh, good question. Leanne Wilson, what made you decide to become a defense attorney? Well, as my days... Would you like another cigar, Mark?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
You sure?
Yep.
Only one?
Well, there's still one more in here. I may have one later.
We got some big, fat, juicy ones in there. And then the humidor down there. Feel free to take a look at those. Okay. What made you decide to become a defense attorney? Well, when I was in law school, I worked at a civil litigation law firm. And I thought, wow, this litigation thing is, it looks pretty interesting. And frankly, the best grade that I got in law school was in trial practice. Go figure.
Wow.
Everything else, yeah, whatever. I'll learn it for the bar exam. Like, whatever. I was working in a law firm. Most of my classes were at night. I was like, whatever. Let's check the box. So, but then I got there and I was like, I was talking to the attorneys and they're like, so when do you think I'd actually get to see a courtroom? And they were like, well, on your own, you'd probably be 6-7 years in. And I was like, 6 to 7 years to actually go try a case? Like, are you kidding me? And granted, I worked at a firm. It was kind of a boutique civil litigation law firm. But I was like, 6 to 7 years at that time. That would just seem like, you got to be kidding me. So I'd previously been in the Marine Corps. So I called up the Marine Corps and I said, hey, you guys need any lawyers? And the OSO, the officer selection officer, was like, in all honesty, we don't even need lawyers right now. And I was like, really? And I was just tired, working full time, going to law school. I was married. My son was born that last year, right before graduation. And I was just tired. I told the Marine Corps, I was like, I was already in an officer program, but I got injured. So let's just do it. I showed up the first day of officer selection, the OCS, the officer selection class, and I had to do it all over again. And I showed up the first day and they were like, hey, you want to be a lawyer? Suddenly they had this great need, typical military, we don't need any lawyers. Oh my God, we let all the lawyers go. We need lawyers yesterday. Yeah. So I said, fine, I'll do that. And, I was like, yeah, because you get to be a trial lawyer. And I remember you sink or you swim. You show up at your first duty station and they're literally like, all right, you're a defense attorney, you're a prosecutor. Okay. Here's your files. You got, 4 cases set next week for pleas and trials. And we only had a judge once a week. So we would start jury selection in the military down in at Parris Island, South Carolina. We would start a jury trial. And the jury went back and deliberated. We started the jury selection for the next jury trial. And we would go till 10, 11 at night because it was the military, right? They asked the jury, hey, you guys, what do you guys want to stay late? Sure, let's do it. I mean, it was just crazy hours. But you got experience trying cases. And here you are, as young lieutenant, young captain, arguing in front of, captains, majors, colonels, answering questions, to the general of, why are we prosecuting this case? Why are we not? So it was a great experience. Anyway, so I loved being a defense attorney. It was much more fun being a defense attorney than it was a prosecutor. And maybe I think it was because in the military, and we were the Eastern Recruiting District. So we had Parris Island plus all the recruiting commands up and down the East Coast, everything east of the Mississippi. And so the people that usually got in trouble, we handled all kinds of cases, but there were a lot of them, what they referred to as dipping in the pool, which was recruiters would go to high schools and they'd be looking good in those dress blue uniforms.
Oh, man.
And the young high school girls just couldn't resist. And the young Marines were stupid enough to do something. And, of course, it all flowed from there. Or recruiters falsifying paperwork. And you're like, God, these guys just, it's not like some thug on the street. These people were able to get into the military. They had some morals. They met the, minimum standard, so to speak, and they screwed it up. You didn't get a great feeling, having a master sergeant that's, a year from retirement losing it all because he falsified some paperwork because some kid wanted to be a Marine so bad, he would do anything, right? So being a defense attorney was much more fun. And a defense attorney, it was so much more fun because you were your own separate command. You were under the command, but they couldn't make you do anything. So like, no, you guys have fun going to PT this morning. I'll do it on my own later. And because it would look like it was some sort of unlawful command influence. You can't tell me what to do. It was the best job in the military. I swear to God. And a guy that I worked with, and I still keep in touch with him occasionally, John Baker. He just retired, a 1-star. He was the chief defense counsel of the Marine Corps. And we did a case early together. We were both right out of Naval Justice School. He was a prior, I think, infantry officer, went to law school. I was prior enlisted, went to law school, got out. We had this case together. It was just fun. He was just a great guy to work with. And he got held in contempt by a military judge in Gitmo because the defense attorneys wanted to, they wouldn't represent, there was a conflict. And Baker said, you're off the case. And the judge was like, no, we have to start all over again. We're not doing this. We're not going to wait another 5 years. He's like, Judge, they have a conflict. That's a conflict. You can't make him stay on. And he was confined to quarters in Gitmo and had a couple of good cigars and relaxed. And they sued in federal court. And he's like, you can't do that to a general when he's fulfilling his duties. And so he just retired as a 1-star. And I think he's going to be the chief public defender in North Carolina. I think it's in Raleigh. But just a good guy. The case, we worked on a couple of cases. It was just the best, most fun I've ever had working on a case. It was great. Just a good guy. So defense attorney's fun. And then when I got out of the military, I thought, well, maybe I'll be a prosecutor. I've been on the prosecutor for a little while. Couldn't get a job as a prosecutor. And I remember I applied to the U.S. Attorney's Office, didn't get a call back. And then the U.S. Attorney at the time, a guy by the name of Ken Norton, his wife was the lieutenant governor here for a while. And he was a defense attorney in private practice. We had a case together, and we started chatting. And I said, I sent a resume to your office, and I didn't even get a call back. He goes, well, I was an idiot, wasn't I? I'm like, well, probably. But
and it all worked out.
And, this is now the start of my 22nd year in private practice. And although there's lots of headaches that come with it, I don't know if I could go to work for somebody else again. It's once you've been your own boss, all that crap they say about, oh, your boss, listen, if I don't work, I don't get paid. I don't get paid days off. If I'm not working, I'm not getting paid. What do they say? I will never work a 40-hour-a-week job so that I can work basically 24/7 as being self-employed, because that's what you do.
You do, but I agree with that. But there's also something about there's a, I don't know, it sounds corny. There's a freedom to it. You don't have to take a case if you don't want to. You don't have to accept a particular client if there's nobody saying you have to do this, and there is something really nice about that.
You're the master of your own destiny.
Absolutely.
And I've mellowed. I mean, every time I have an attorney that used to work for me, she's now a judge. And she came to the office one day and somebody was like, "Oh, can I take off a little early or whatever?" And she looked at me like, "Who are you? Like, this is not the Scott Reisch that I worked for that was at the office 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning, worked till 9 p.m. at night, and got up and did it all. I mean, literally 6-7 days a week. Just go, 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 go." I'm like, well, I've mellowed,
But that's also how you establish a name and a reputation and, all of those things. So there definitely is a lot of hard work and long hours that go into getting started and securing your spot.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come easy, that's for sure. And I was thinking about today because I was listening to an audio on book of, have you heard that guy, David Goggins?
No.
He's a former Navy SEAL guy that basically, like, the name of the book is You Can't Hurt Me. And he had a tough childhood growing up, basically, was lazy and whatever, and kind of had this moment in his life where, like, I'm going to change. Now he's like, super athlete, 175 pounds versus the 300 he was at one point. Was in the Air Force, then went to the Navy. And he's just got that mentality of, like, you don't stop until the job is done. And I think that was probably the thing that I learned most in the military was, we don't work, 9 to 5 or 7 to 3. It was, we're here until we get it done. Mm-hmm. And we get it done, then we'll go home, and then we'll come back tomorrow bright and early, and we'll start on the next project. And we're going to work until it gets done. Some days we'll get done early, but the only thing that matters, like anything in life, is mission accomplishment.
Yep.
And now it's a little easier to take off, but because I have some people that, I have some great attorneys in the office that help me. So it makes my life a little easier now. Oh, yeah, and Curious Crime, To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, that's a fantastic, inspirational book. Yep. That, and the movie's pretty good too, if you haven't read the book. But I mean, that's, when you're thinking back as a kid, like, God, I want to be a lawyer. That's a great book. Let's see, a couple of questions here. So, Kathy's from Maine saying hi. Thanks for watching the show. Michael wants to also, if a defendant takes the stand, it opens it up to a slew of questions under cross-examination that may not normally would be asked or admitted. That's true. Like I said, if you can try a case without your defendant taking the stand, and that's the best way to do it. Truly believe. Cigars. What were you smoking? I got a Macanudo here. What were you smoking?
I was just smoking this little Tatiana. I don't know. It's kind of a flavored thing. It's really mellow. I like it.
Yeah. Jody wants to know, who and when is it decided if something is admissible or not? Well, you first have to look at the rules of evidence, which say whether the evidence is relevant and did you bring the right person in to lay the appropriate foundation and to authenticate whatever document it may be. And then ultimately it's the judge to decide whether it comes in or not. You may think, oh, this is coming in, and the judge may say, oh, no, it won't. So it just depends.
Well, and both sides, but often, especially the defense, we go to great pains, great lengths to try to get something, admitted as evidence. Mm-hmm. I would say, generally speaking, it's probably a little bit easier for the prosecution because it was collected right there at the time and place, and a lot of times our evidence is kind of after the fact stuff, so it can be a bit of a battle. But
it is funny sometimes when you subpoena the officer to bring in the evidence that the prosecution doesn't want you to bring.
Right.
It's been in their care, custody, control the entire time, but it hurts their case.
Yep.
So you bring in the officer. How did you collect this evidence? Where were you? Did you authenticate it?
Yep.
Kathy, the Halderson case is in Wisconsin. Yeah. Smoking on YouTube, demonetized. Ah, man. Jeez. Will they demonetize this for smoking cigars? Are they really that big a bunch of communists that they would do that?
That baffles me. It's not illegal.
Well, did you see Rand Paul? He got demonetized because he basically said masks don't work. The cloth masks.
And he's
don't
a
work.
doctor.
He's a doctor. He's a medical doctor.
Yep.
And he got demonetized. And I think he ultimately shut down his YouTube channel. And then the CDC comes out the other day and says,
Cloth masks.
Cloth masks, we've been lying to you all along.
Uh-huh.
They're useless. They're probably giving you COVID and other diseases. And so Rand Paul made a statement to YouTube and said, basically, I think it was something to the effect of, I hope some sniveling little person at Google realizes that they're wrong. Private Eye. Scott smokes that cigar like I smoke a doobie. That'll get us demonetized.
Yeah.
And yes, Frank, thank you for getting the audio set up. So this all came about maybe 12:30. We were doing today's video. And I said, hey, we're going to have Mark on the show again tonight. I said, but maybe we should do it at the hangar so that we can smoke cigars like we talked about last time. And I saw this look on Frank's face was like, when will I know? Because I'm going to have to pack up and move everything. And so I immediately called Mark and said, hey, still good, right? Yeah. He was like,
absolutely.
Yeah, let's do it. So thank you, Frank. Thank you, Julie, for coming out here and doing that. And if anybody knows of a good contractor that can come and put a bathroom in here, it's all wired. It's got the stuff we need a bathroom. A couple of these hangars over here have showers. They're pretty nice. Some have offices.
Holy cow.
The lady next door, she has a beautiful jet. I think Julie will attest to that. It's a Pilatus. It's a beautiful Pilatus. And she built an office above ground, and it's metal stairs up, and she's got a nice big office up there. And she built a sliding glass door because she was going to put a deck on the back so she could watch the beautiful sunsets here, overlooking the Rockies here on the Flatirons. And the airport was like, no, you can't do that. Your hangar ends right at the hangar wall. And so I think it's ridiculous, but I hope she gets it because I think she would inspire lots of people to put patios out there. We need to do something here. I just need to make a decision. The floor's got to be redone. But I was
might as well put a studio in here then.
I know. Well, a lot of people may not know this, but if you don't know this already, if you go to Plain Talk with Scott Reisch and subscribe, then sometimes we put up videos. We're working on them, but they're a little harder to do. Right, Frank? Yeah. They're a little harder to do. And I'll be completely honest with you, okay? Frank is an artist. He's an artist. He likes perfection. He's like, Scott, I can't put the video up. I got to get the music just right. I'm like, Frank, just put the video up. He's like, it'll be done in a day or two. I have to sync the music to this, and he does great. He did a great video. We went to Las Vegas for New Year's. We went with the lovely Miss Kristen, and went out with Scott from the Big Jackpot, and of course they gave him a big suite, and went out and shot automatic weapons in Vegas, which is it's worth the money. I mean, I got to shoot the Barrett M50. Shot the Squad automatic weapon, 7.62, just fully automatic. It was so much fun. I mean, so much fun. So, which is funny because so many people are like, "Hey, Scott, we want to see more other stuff." Like, okay, we'll try to do it. I think it's just my life, but apparently some people are like, I want to see what goes on. But who would have thought? Who would have thought that my life would be considered interesting? Yes, a studio would be great. I thought about what if I just moved the law firm out here? What if we just put that top level over here, just made a big walkway and offices across the top with some windows?
That's a great idea.
And then a studio down below.
It's a great idea.
I mean, how sweet would that be? You almost need 2 hangers. I can hear the lovely Miss Kristen say, "No, no," because we have 5 hangers on our row here, and the guy in the end has 2. He owns both of those, and then the lady has the Pilatus. Then I have this, and then we have Greg next door. We actually did a video with him. We talked to him about how he became a pilot. He has the same plane as we do, but he's got an older beach, beach Bonanza from like 1962. It's like it's like the SUV from 1960s. This is what executives flew around in before they had jet aircraft. It's so cool, so cool. So anyway,
I remember when we had to fly down to Alamosa, and the friend of yours took us in his jet.
Yeah, that's Mark. Also Mark. And he had a blast, remember?
Yeah. Oh, he went with me.
Yeah, we were out. That's a fun story. We can talk about that.
That was a fun
We were
one.
down in Montrose for it was a homicide case, wasn't it?
Yep.
And we were out investigating, looking for people. And Mark is an interesting guy. And if you look at Plain Talk, he's the one that owns the P-51 Mustang that we show him flying around on. And real interesting guy. Chemical engineer training, went to law school. Then somebody hires him to basically run their oil and gas company, able to cash out. So he has a P-51 Mustang, has a beautiful hangar at the end of the runway, and he has a Citation Mustang. And I think we were getting ready to fly out here that day, and the hangar door wouldn't open.
Yeah.
And I was like,
the motor was shot or something.
And this is before I owned it. And so I called the owner, like, I can't get anybody there till tomorrow or something. I'm like, no, we need to get this done now. So I remember I called Mark and said, hey, can we get the friends and family discount? Do you want to go to Montrose with us, investigate a homicide case? And he'd always done civil stuff, like transactional guy. So here we are out in the middle of the night going to the slums of Montrose, Colorado.
It was Alamosa, because we were the scene, if you recall, was
Alamosa,
at the base of the Great Sand Dunes.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It was Alamosa. I misspoke. That was another homicide we had down in Montrose.
But yeah, you guys went to court, and he rode around with me for a day and a half.
Yeah, and we were out there. What was it? It was something in the middle of the night. We're trying to interview people.
Yep.
And he's like, "Are we gonna die?" And I'm like, "Don't worry, Mark's
Probably not.
Mark's a packing."
He probably won't die.
I mean, he had a blast. He still talks about that. He's like, "Whatever happened to that client?" I'm like,
Case was dismissed.
Case dismissed.
Yep.
And he's like, "Well, that's great." I mean, it was
that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I like old Crime Talk 1, don't get me wrong, but a jet or a turboprop, little Pilatus. Next time I have an extra $7 million laying around that I don't know what to do with,
right,
burning a hole in my pocket, I'd buy a little Pilatus, or even a little Citation Mustang. You can get one of those for like $4 million. I mean, a little out of my price range right now. I'm just a little criminal defense attorney. Not one of those big fancy 17th Street lawyers that does this. Let's see here. Classic, checking on your tail number. Thought it might be Crime 1. No, I've thought about that. It's probably due for a paint job in the next couple of years. Wouldn't that be cool if you could put like a little Crime Talk logo with the fingerprint on there? Wouldn't that be cool? Probably put a sticker on the window. Somebody was, are we doing the Patreon live stream tonight? I think are you okay talking a little longer?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Let's see, ask a couple more questions. Somebody want to know, when did the stream start? About an hour ago. I had a friend who rebuilt a Stearman 1 piece at a time all over the country. He partnered with a couple of guys who had a Waco. Yep. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean,
Stearman 1, that's the old biplane, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We wanted to. Darwin wants to know, Scott, will John Pryor have to repay the blood money from Tammy's insurance if Chad is convicted of fraud on those charges? I think what you're referring to is the house. It's my understanding Mr. Pryor in that case got paid the house for his attorney's fees, which would be an interesting question, because if Chad is convicted of killing his wife under the Slayer statute, he would not be entitled
Couldn't benefit.
to benefit in any way. So the insurance company could attempt to claw back that money. The kids who the estate would have gone to could also then try to say, hey, we're entitled to that money. The insurance company's not going to pay it twice. They're going to be like, hey, we got to go get it from him. And then the house, assuming how the house was titled, if the Slayer statute were to kick in, this is just generally speaking, I'm not saying I know all the nuances of Idaho law, but if then that were the case, the house wouldn't have been Chad Daybell's house to give up or sign over to the attorney for attorney's fees. And so the kids would be entitled to that property back, which is why you never take property as collateral. Take it for payment afterwards, but do not take it while the case is pending, particularly when there could be an issue regarding that. That's just good old-fashioned ethics 101. You just don't want to do that. So let's see here. Good to light up a stogie with Gen A fuel in the hangar. I dig this channel. Well, this is 100 low lead, just to be technical. It's not jet fuel. But I think we're safe. It takes quite a bit to light that up. Now, Jet A is nothing but kerosene and burns pretty.
That'd be a little different.
Easy. Yeah. We're okay. We have enough ventilation. Besides, we have this heater going. Are you hot enough? I think we got it cranked up to about 75.
Plenty
you guys,
warm.
Frank and Julie, you comfortable enough? Okay. Is the cigar smoke bothering you guys yet? Julie, still have an opportunity to try a cigar. But you have to have a good one so that you don't say, oh, my God, I just had a cheap cigar, and, you wasted that experience. Frank, you sure? I'm sure the missus would love you coming home smelling like a cigar. Because I can tell you, lovely Miss Kristen loves it. Take off all your clothes, go take a shower, brush your teeth. Let's see here. Oh, somebody said Dan Bongino was also kicked off, saying the masks don't work. And I'm not saying the masks, I'm just saying what the CDC said, which is cloth masks don't work. And apparently they only work from you spreading germs, not the other way around. But I don't know. All I know is I'm getting tired of wearing the crap. Mm-hmm. Literally, I really, really am. Barrett, please cover more of the Alex Murdaugh issues tomorrow. Well, we covered that today. We put a a summary up last week, Sunday, I think it was, wasn't it? 2 weeks ago, maybe? Are you familiar with that case?
Tell me the summary.
The South Carolina case. So there's this attorney, a guy by the name of Alex Murdaugh.
Oh.
His family has been the prosecutors in South Carolina in this particular jurisdiction since like 1905. Murdaugh has always been in the office. Has a very successful law firm. And things got a little weird. The guy had a kid by the name of Paul Murdaugh who was out drunk, driving around, ran a boat into a bridge down in Beaufort, South Carolina, right there by Parris Island, I might add. That's why the case is somewhat intriguing, because I'm familiar with the area. And the kid got some special treatment where, it looks like some people interfered in the Murdaugh family, law enforcement, because of family and favors and those types of things. Fast forward to June of this year, I think it was, right? May or June? Both Alex Murdaugh's son, the one that was in trouble, and his wife are found dead at their 11,000-acre hunting cabin.
And then didn't he stage his own assault or something too? Yeah.
Tried to stage like his own death. Had his drug dealer maybe shoot him in the head, but he had no real injuries. And they said the tire was flat, even though it was like a never flat tire. Nothing made any sense, right? And of course, this guy goes off to treatments. I'm in treatment. I made mistakes. I need to go to treatment. Goes to treatment, gets indicted because it turns out his housekeeper / nanny who helped raise his kids somehow died at their property. He convinced the kids and said, I'll take care of the suit against me, my property, for your mom. Gets some ridiculous multi-million-dollar settlement. And I'm sorry, you're not worth multi-million-dollars dead, Mark. Neither am I, let alone through an insurance company. Right? It's just weird how the lady died. The whole... Turns out complete fraud. He writes checks to corporations that he has set up. The kids are like, we didn't get any money. What's going on here? And so you've seen cases like this where people, it's like the money manager guys. Somebody says, hey, I didn't get my money. Like the Murdaugh kind of, Bernie Madoff,
yeah.
And, somebody starts complaining, it's a little weird. And the more they dig, the deeper it gets. And some people I think they find it rather interesting. I think it's super interesting because you've got this wealthy family, addicted to drugs apparently, spending millions of dollars. He's broke. He's hired two of the most expensive lawyers in South Carolina, but he can't make a $7 million bond, which is significant because he says, I have $10 in my bank account or something, But yet he's hired. So you wonder then, who's paying his attorney's fees? Is it the people that are so interlinked with him? Are they, just good old boy friends with him? Or what? Now he's a person of interest in the death of his wife and the kid. I mean, it just gets more intriguing as things go on. And when I was down in South Carolina several months ago, I went to my little cigar hangout down there. And the guy that runs this place is a great guy. Is originally from India. And apparently his parents lived rather comfortably in India, but they came to America basically for the freedom of America. And he owns his own business down there, owns multiple stores, just a great guy. So I asked him, I'm like, what's going on down here with the Murdaugh thing? Like, what's going on? Oh, man, everybody, that's all they do is talk about the Murdaugh thing. Everybody's talking about it. This is the biggest story down here. Everybody's following it.
Put them on the map.
And everyone's like, oh, yeah, it goes so much deeper than what they've even scraped. So everybody down there knows that something's fishy. Some people are like, well, I don't get it. What's the big... Oh, no, this is going to go much, much deeper, in my humble opinion. It's just an interesting story. So, and who's there's a lady down there that does some really good work. Fisk News, I think, is what it is. She's covering it really well. We tried to get her on the podcast, but she won't even return our phone calls. Like, really? Yeah. I think she's like a consultant, or she did a story for 2020 and whatever, but I think it'd be truly bad.
Well, you have to wonder if the people that are paying his legal fees are trying to keep him quiet. I'm sure it does go much deeper. And
I'm sure you've worked on cases. It always gets a little tricky, and you have to dot your I's and cross your T's ethically when somebody else other than the client is paying the bill.
Yes.
You have to make it absolutely certain that regardless of who pays the bill, everybody needs to understand that the client is the one that I have a duty of loyalty to. Mm-hmm. And they can tell me things that I'm not going to tell you, even if they've signed a waiver saying, oh, you can tell, family and all that kind of stuff. But no, you have to.
That happens a lot with cases we have where mom or dad or whomever is paying the legal fees, and they, even if it's somebody who's, over 18 years old, they want to know what's going on.
Yep.
That's tricky.
It is. You have to let them know, hey, and you tell them straight up.
Yep.
Little Johnny's in trouble. I'm sure he's told you whatever, but if he comes to me and says, don't tell my mom and dad, guess what? I can't tell you.
Right.
And you can't withhold, payment, and you can fire me, but I'm just not going to change much of anything.
Yep.
So, Hempland, Texas, would say wife was going to divorce him. Yeah, she was getting suspicious as to their financial situation. So it's just a weird case. And he doesn't get that. I mean, to get paid like $4 million for a 60-some-year-old woman who's a housekeeper. I mean, wrongful death in Colorado, if somebody dies, the non-economic damages, for example, are capped at $280,000. So she didn't have medical bills that were that big to get multi-million dollars for an old lady. No disrespect, but she ain't worth that much in the eyes of the insurance company. And insurance companies don't give you, 7 figures.
You don't get paid
easily.
Suffering money from insurance.
They fight that to the bitter end. So you got to wonder who from the insurance company was in on it. How are they getting paid? And then the ethics people in South Carolina started sending out subpoenas to all his banker buddies who were managing the estates of all these people where he was representing them, or these people didn't get any money. So there was a banker that was, the family's bank goes back to 1900s. Probably knew the Murdoch, close family friend, went to the same country clubs, socialized. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how that came to be about.
That will be a movie or even a mini series 3 years from now.
It just gets more interesting.
Oh, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are scrambling right now. They've got their attorneys in place. They're trying to get restraining orders. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on. People who are awfully worried.
Grandma, Grammaw. Scott, looks like Denny Crane there. Laugh out loud. Every day should end with a good cigar in a warm climate. That's the problem with Denver right now. We were talking about it when we walked over to the FBO, is that it's cold outside.
Yep.
It's not fun to smoke a cigar in the cold.
Nope.
So if you can smoke it inside, that's the best way to do it. Like here, for example. Richard, you must be so rich to own your own jet. Well, one, it's not a jet, so therefore, obviously not rich. Care of the hitman in prison, threatening he didn't pay. Okay. Just think of the days of Strom. Kiki Rose, just think about the days of Strom Thurmond. That will tell you what type of world they were in.
Yeah. Well, that was a lot of days because he lived a long time.
He lived a long time. I mean, that guy was like
90.
The people of South Carolina kept
92.
Kept electing that guy, and he was like, KKK member, and it's just like, man, that's not the people of South Carolina that I know.
No.
I mean, it's I don't know. Hempland, Texas, so sad for the family that lost. Yeah, the daughter, Mallory Beach was her name. Yeah, I mean, it's tragic. Beautiful young lady, world ahead of her, and all because the parents thought it was cool to let them go out and drink and party when they were underage. And I always get in trouble for this. I wouldn't say in trouble, but I get, oh, Scott, you're just an old fuddy-duddy. Because I'm always like, parents, do not let your kids drink underage. Don't buy the alcohol for them. Don't provide the place to have them drink the alcohol, because all it takes is one person to get sick, drink too much, go to the hospital. Somebody gets in a car, drives, kills somebody. Guess what? They're coming after you. And,
it happens all the time. I can remember as a cop getting called to parties. Somebody got hurt, somebody got sick, whatever, somebody passed out. And it would be that scenario where, the Jones parents wanted to throw a party for their kid and their friends, and so they were going to do it the safe way and have all the kids stay overnight, and we're going to take everybody's car keys and we'll provide the alcohol and it's safe. I guess maybe it's safer than driving, but boy, are you opening yourself up to huge problems.
I've seen so many cases where somebody drives, somebody gets killed. Who provided the alcohol, right?
Yep.
They go after everybody, to the sales clerk, to the liquor store owner, to the parents, to everybody involved. And then you get cases where, we were drinking, and next thing you know, somebody, I don't remember consenting, and next thing I know,
yep,
the guy that I thought was my best friend was doing things to me that I didn't consent to, right? Like I said, I sound like the old, boring fuddy-duddy. But when you see what happens, and like it's so preventable, like just don't do it. Like, you're the parent, you're not their friend. You have to tell them sometimes, no. It's easy, roll off the lips. No, no.
Yeah,
we're not going to break the law.
And obviously it's it's legal if you want to have your 17-year-old to have a beer in your house with you. It's completely another thing to have 17-year-olds friends in your house having a beer.
It's a felony.
Yeah.
Contributing to delinquency to a minor.
Yep.
And like I said, I don't want to sound like some teetotaler or something, because I'm not. I'm just saying, I've seen what the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yes. I've seen more good intention. Well, parties, we're just going to have fun. It's going to be safe. Yeah.
Well, and I guarantee you that the other friends that were spending the night, their parents had no idea it was going to be a party where they're all sitting around drinking. Yeah. I guess maybe some of them did. I can't imagine as a parent that I would consent to that. If my underage child was going to go stay over at somebody's house and they're providing alcohol, and I wouldn't be up for that.
Yep. I wouldn't condone it. Now, of course, I find out as my children get older that they did all that stuff, but at least I didn't know about it.
Right.
I could plead ignorance. I had no idea.
Well, we did all that stuff when we were kids too, but
it was a different time. The police used to drive you home because they knew that whatever your parents did to you was going to be worse than what the police were going to do to you, right?
Exactly.
It was a different time. The cops would drive you home. Mr. Reisch, we found your son and his buddies out at this construction site trying to drive the equipment. We're not going to call the police because we know you're going to take care of it. Oh, we will.
Yep.
You're just like, oh, God, here it comes.
Yep.
Right? It just never ends. And then Mama Pink says, wait, is Scott using an engine cylinder for an ashtray? Yes, I am. That is a cylinder from an airplane. It's my ashtray.
Wow, somebody had a good eye.
Oh, no, look at that. Yeah, look at that.
Wow.
Big old cylinder. It's my ashtray.
Very nice.
You gonna have another cigar, Mark?
I might.
You should. You should.
Wait to see.
Okay. We doing okay? As long as the questions keep coming in, we'll keep talking.
I'm good.
It's 7:45. We'll go a little longer. Battery level low. What's that go to, Frank? Well, Frank is fixing that. We'll see. Boots. Yeah, I got my cowboy boots on, because I like my cowboy boots. And we went to the stock show the other night. We'll have that video up for you. The lovely Miss Kristen and I went to the stock show. And, went with my cowboy hat and I even look like a cowboy. I look like a total urban cowboy. But, I have cowboy boots. I have a cowboy hat. I have two cowboy hats, actually. And I've seen all of the episodes of Yellowstone, so I think that practically makes me a cowboy, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Have you watched Yellowstone?
Oh, I love it.
I love that show.
Yeah.
Seriously, I love that show.
I was very disappointed that the season ended so quickly. It felt like the new season was a few weeks, and that was it.
It was just getting good.
Yep.
Getting started.
Yep.
Love
that show.
It's a great show.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I watched the first one, and I was like, okay, it's a little slow. And then I couldn't stop. It was terrible.
Like any good series.
And I never used to be that big of a TV guy because it was always, I'm not going to wait around for Thursday at 7 o'clock. What? I got too much stuff to do. But when you can just turn on and binge something, I mean, literally, it's like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I need to get to sleep, but I got to know what happens next.
Have you seen Breaking Bad?
I have.
That is the best series ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's some good stuff. And the other one, the lovely Miss Kristen, last night, she goes, you got to watch this show. I'm like, okay, what is it? It's called Cheer. Have you seen that?
No.
Cheer. It's about these community college in Texas where they have like this national cheerleading thing. They did like a series 1, and I think I watched part of it last. She goes, oh my God, it's so good. And this one was pretty good, and then COVID hit, so they didn't get to go to nationals. But at the end of it, and then I kind of fell asleep, but there was this guy that kind of got a lot of notoriety. He was on the Ellen show, went to the Oscars, did all this stuff. He gets arrested for interacting with young boys, you know? And he would go to these cheerleading competitions, and he would tweet and exchange and, interact with these young kids like, hey, send me pictures, blah, blah, blah. Gross, right? And anyway, he gets arrested and he's still in prison. I think his name is Jerry Hunt, I think is his name, something like that. I mean, talk about just this kid had it all. He was making money. He's notoriety, things are going well. And they blew it all for sex.
Well,
and I don't even think he got any. Thank goodness, because they were all like 14. Mm-hmm. But it's like, why would you jeopardize that for sex, for God's sakes? I just don't get it. But people, they just, impulse control issues.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that they didn't do background checks for Little League coaches and stuff like that. I think it's pretty much the norm now, but it wasn't very long ago that wasn't the case.
I know. And they talked about that because the attorney that's representing a couple of these young boys, they're twins, and they actually appeared and explained, I believe them. I'm like, looks like, he did it. Thank goodness they didn't do anything, but he tried, like pin the kid in a stall at this cheerleading competition. And thank goodness it didn't happen. But, it affects these kids. And, I've said it all along, it's like the guy that's coaching the female junior high volleyball team. Like, really? Like, there's no female coaches out there that could do it, right? And everybody looks shocked. Oh, I just couldn't believe it. The guy that, says he always loved children and he wouldn't teach anything more than a 6th grade, And they come to find out that, he's got a selection of all his photographs, and he always gave the cute little pat on the butt to the little kids, and and it's just like, are you people stupid? Like, what do you think? And I get in trouble for it all the time because I was like, if the guy is 50 years old, living in his mother's basement, and he works at Chuck E. Cheese,
you better
be afraid.
Exactly.
Be very, very afraid. Mm-hmm. Why is he there? Because that's where the children are, right? I mean, use some common sense, ladies and gentlemen. And there were people that were defending this guy. Like, oh, he's a good guy. He would never do it. And it's like, his phone had all the text messages and posts back and forth with these kids and the Snapchats. And yet people were, telling these kids that they didn't do it. And don't get me wrong, I know people lie. I've had lots of cases where, people made false sex assault allegations. But when you're 14 years old, most 14-year-olds don't want to explain to the world their first sexual encounters on a witness stand, right? It's just not right. I mean,
the other thing that always amazes me in those situations, like with Little League or things like that, is how many parents later on said, well, I had a feeling and but yet the number of people that don't come forward or, I I brushed it off, or I thought, oh, I'm just being paranoid, or I'm overthinking it. Man, if I'm a parent and I have that feeling, I'm going to say something.
Yeah. And the attorney that's representing the young boys, she was actually a victim of Dr. Nasser, the guy from the University of Michigan, the doctor who was like,
the Olympics.
"Ooh, I need to give some treatment to you with very, probing various orifices of your body kind of thing." And she's like, I trusted the guy, I didn't know. I mean, and they told me this was the guy to trust, and my coaches were mean. He was nice to me. And so, good for her. She's out there, making the world a better place, so to speak. But yeah, it's just like so obvious sometimes. And you're just thinking, how did somebody not notice? Like, I looked at the case in 10 minutes and knew that something's not right here. But, all those organizations like U.S. Olympics, I think they paid out big money.
Oh, my gosh.
Michigan paid out big money. Who was the football coach at the University of Pennsylvania that was doing stuff?
From Penn State.
Penn State,
Yep.
yeah, Penn State, sorry.
Jerry Sandusky.
Sandusky, right? And all the people that covered for that guy.
Yep.
It wasn't just one person in
It was years.
50 years made an allegation. It was repeated people. He knew about it, but he's their guy. He was winning. It's okay. Yep. And it's just not right.
Well, that was the end of Joe Paterno's career there. They said that he covered up.
He covered up for him.
Yep.
And, kind of died in disgrace, so to speak.
Yep.
It's crazy. DFS, I had a close friend get convicted of sexual abuse to his niece and nephews 20 years after the fact. Is there a statute of limitation on child sex abuse cases? Not anymore in Colorado. In fact, they have a civil thing in Colorado now where you can sue. You have a limited time, but you can go back to like 1960s now.
Yeah, they just announced the first 2 civil cases were filed under that new law late last week.
Yeah. And there's good and bad to both of that. Clearly, if somebody's accused, like, what if all your witnesses are gone? The documents that would have corroborated that, your calendars, your memos, truly comes down to a swearing contest. But that's what juries do. They decide who to believe.
It's pretty hard to defend yourself if somebody says you did something 30 years ago.
I know. If somebody said, "Mark, where were you 30 years ago?" I can't really tell you the month or the date exactly, but, somebody said you did something really bad.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin?
You can't. It's almost impossible to defend yourself to that.
Yeah. Yep. And how do you disprove a negative as well?
Right.
Hey, Mark, there was a kid leaving your house that, was leaving your house the other day. You must have done something inappropriate, right? Somebody makes an out. How do you disprove that?
Right.
Well, yeah, it was like it was the Cub Scout kid or the soccer kid selling chocolate bars, and I said no. Or it was snowing. The guy comes in the door for 30 seconds, and, there could be a completely plausible, innocent explanation for it, or there could be something nefarious. Who knows?
Right.
But how do you prove that? But that's why the prosecution has to do that. Clumsy Clairvoyance wants to know, Scott, have you ever had a client who was convicted or found guilty that you knew or believed was innocent? Yes. Yeah.
I don't think you ever know for sure, do you, though? I mean, you have a strong feeling. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, I mean, normally the truth or a pretty darn close version comes out.
Yes.
From the time the charges are filed until a trial. Pretty close version of it usually comes out. When you get cases of he said, she said, or he said, and she said, those are the ones that keep you up at night. Because, am I asked the right questions? Did I interview the right witnesses? There's somebody out there that knows something that hasn't come forward. And, you think, man, in my heart of hearts, I'm trying to be as objective as possible. And I just don't believe the victim, right? And, that's why sometimes it's always, if you have somebody not familiar with the case, hey, will you just look at this, almost like a jury, will you take a look at this statement? Do you think this story is credible, right? And sometimes people be like, yeah, I believe her. Or, We often have paralegals. You are always a good sounding board as well. Have an investigator take a look at it, because we've all heard it before, right? We've heard every excuse. Did you do it? Did you not? And you can just, sometimes the story just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get the people that thou protest too much, have an excuse for everything.
And, and I've had cases where I had a pretty strong feeling initially one way or the other, and then throughout the course of the case and our investigation, I sort of changed my mind.
Oh, yeah. I've had cases where client comes to you and you're just like, this story makes no sense.
Right, yeah.
Like,
You're full
are
of
you kidding me? Right? There's no way. And you go and you investigate it and you check it out. And sure enough, it's like, oh my God. And that's kind of the cases where you're like, they convinced me.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Sometimes you can convince, other people, and sometimes you can't.
Right.
You just absolutely never, ever know.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the ones that end up sort of bothering me the most are the ones where you just have a really strong feeling, opinion, whatever, that they are not guilty. And, you go to trial and you lose. And, man, those stick with you.
Yep. For sure. Let me just take care of a little business here really quick.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yes. Boom. Interested in doing a homicide case?
Yes.
Just got one.
New work.
Never turn down work.
Absolutely. I agree.
All right. So hopefully clumsy clairvoyance, that answers your question. Yes, it does. And there's other ones where you think, wow, that's a pretty good story. I believe it. And then you figure out it's a complete not true.
Mm-hmm.
Big Chewhungus wants to have a cigar, but caught the germ at my daughter's birthday party, so I better not. Yeah.
That's probably a good idea.
They're going to implode. Scott, can you please answer Vox Temporis question? They're going to implode if you don't. I will try. A little help here. Can you tell me what the question is? Vox Temporis. What do you think of jury nullification of the law? Well, you can't argue jury nullification, but who hasn't argued a little jury nullification every now and then? I mean, seriously.
You just can't come out and say it.
You can't come out and say it. But juries will usually get it right. They really do. And usually you saw years and years ago lots of jury nullification stuff on marijuana cases. They, small amounts of drugs. People are like, really? We're wasting our time on this? So you can't argue it. And people, I remember DAs would do their voir dire. Ladies and gentlemen, who has feelings about marijuana? Whether it should be legal or illegal, all that kind of stuff, right? And of course, you got to get in voir dire and say, ladies and gentlemen, I completely understand, about marijuana, but this isn't a question. This is a question whether it happened or not. And, maybe the evidence leans towards you, but it's such a stupid case, and the prosecutor shouldn't be prosecuting it. It's a complete waste of time for everybody. And the jury comes back and they say not guilty. And it was clearly jury nullification. They're like, why are we wasting our time on this type of stuff?
There was a sort of a small group in Denver just a few years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago. They used to set up protests outside the courthouse down in Denver. You remember that about jury nullification? There was a particular case going on, and I think it was kind of an anti-government group that was doing the protesting.
And they always handed out all their literature.
Yes.
No jury nullification.
Yep. And they actually got moved off of the courthouse property and had to be out on the sidewalk.
And what happened?
Well, the head guy's now serving 15 years.
He is. Yep. But somebody sued on his behalf, and because they said you can't move somebody off of the courthouse steps because you don't like the information that they're providing, even if it goes against the law. And the court had to allow them to go back,
really, and
be able to pass out their literature outside the courthouse. I mean, that's the epitome of a free speech zone, right? The courthouse steps.
Yep. And since then, I haven't seen anybody doing it.
No, and I know exactly who you're talking about. And I think he went down, if I remember correctly, for threatening judges.
Yes.
Like he left voicemails threatening judges saying, I'm going to, come get you, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And that was his downfall. If he had just stuck, but he was always pushing the edge of true threats versus free speech.
Right.
It was a very, very fine line.
Yep.
How do I pronounce this? SCHM economics. SCHME economics. Do you have any interesting stories about juries? Things you found out afterwards, after the trial? I don't talk to juries. Do you work for attorneys that like to talk to juries afterwards?
I've had a few. I've had a few that have contacted me, given me the list of jurors, and said, can you try to contact them? Not a lot, but I've had a few cases.
Yeah, I can think of one case we worked together where I think I had you talk to them because I was just so flabbergasted by the. Mm-hmm. But normally I don't talk to jurors afterwards because it doesn't matter. It's not like they're going to change their mind. They had their opportunity. You're not going to change their mind. Normally, if you get a not guilty and the DAs lose, obviously, they like to go back there and tell the jurors of all the information that you didn't get to hear.
Right.
Well, because it wasn't legally permissible evidence that could come in. I got a real problem with that. Frankly, I think that may even be unethical, but we'll leave it at that.
My experience has been, there's usually a juror or two that will talk to you a little bit, but at least the cases where I've done that, they've not really wanted to talk about it a whole lot.
Yeah, and I think it's normally the circumstances where they don't want to talk. It's like they made their decision, they don't like it, but they made it, and what can you do about it?
And I think every time I've done it, it's been after a guilty verdict. Mm-hmm. And so, I take that with a grain of salt. Maybe they just didn't want to talk to me because I was from the defense. I don't know, but
yeah.
But it is kind of interesting to hear their perspective on certain witnesses or certain evidence, and when they do talk to you.
Absolutely. I think it's a great system. I mean, to get 12 people who've never met each other from all different walks of life to agree.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you have 12 people, and you say, "Hey, what do you guys want to have for lunch?" Right?
Right.
You'll get probably 10 different answers.
You're sure as heck not going to get them to agree on one thing.
You'll get a couple of strong personalities. I want pizza. No, I can't have pizza. I'm gluten-free. I just want a salad. Other people are like, I'll go along with whatever anybody else wants to do. Mm-hmm. So to get people to agree on serious matters, I mean, you have to admit, it's pretty freaking great the way it works.
It's an amazing system.
Yeah. And to think, that our founding fathers set this system up because, and some people don't like this, but they didn't trust people in power. Right. They didn't trust the government. Mm-hmm. And, you have to have that healthy skepticism. I mean, if you're one of those people that, whatever my government says is good enough for me, that's just the way it is, okay. I mean, you're entitled to that view. Maybe it's just my skepticism over, the 20 plus years of practicing law, where you've dealt with the government and they don't always get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, I'm skeptical, right? Prove it to me. I mean, I think one of the greatest examples, and not to get into politics in any way, but like all the lockdown stuff and the masks and, get the vaccine. I mean, and I got the vaccine. And I think I had the Omicron. Kind of went through our office pretty darn quick. We're people that were all vaccinated and vaxxed and boosted. And you think, well, if I'm back, because you think most vaccines, like the polio vaccine, right? Like, well, if you get the polio vaccine, you're not going to get polio. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of like a breakthrough case where somebody got polio, right? I mean, it's just completely eradicated. So if you're vaccinated, why would you be concerned if somebody wasn't vaccinated? And if they don't want to do it, why should you care? I mean, and it turns out right now, apparently it doesn't freaking matter. Like, they're not saying you're not going to get it. It's just maybe going to reduce the symptoms. So I don't know.
Well, when you talk about, not trusting the government or whatever, when it comes to like a court of law, look at so many different things that are going on in our society right now, and the sort of political motivation either way for decisions that are made. So if you were charged with a crime, would you want one person who, in some countries it's an appointed person, some countries it's an elected person, whatever. There could be all kinds of political motivation or social media pressure, whatever, for that one person to decide something one way or another. And I mean, I wouldn't trust that.
Call me skeptical. I mean, bottom line, people need to do what's best for them.
Yep.
I mean, that's my humble opinion. All I know is I just don't want to get sick again. That's my thing. So even if it reduces the symptoms, sign me up.
Yep.
Ike, Scott, do you remember the murder of KOA radio talk show host Alan Berg, June of 1985? I do remember that. I was in high school, but I used to listen to Alan Berg on the radio all the time. He was a disbarred attorney, and he was just incredible. And he was Jewish, and a bunch of white supremacists gunned him down. I believe it was at his house, but it's been a long time. It's like a white supremacist group out of, I think, Washington State or something to that effect. And a lot of people went to prison on that. Interesting case. Yeah. And I mean, this guy's person. I mean, he's just larger than life. He's like, got this barred. He's recovering alcoholic. And remember, he had a talk show host. He's a talk show host. And I remember, for some reason, I remember one time listening to him. I think it was like in the evening. And somebody called in and was like, Alan, I agree with you 100%. And he hung up on the guy and says, I don't need to talk to you if you disagree with me. I'm here to argue with people that disagree. Let's see here. Someone had a comment. Blue and cigars bring back the good old days. Cheers. But the question is, really regular flu we've had for years, and the flu shall be effective ever again. I don't know. It's for people that are much, much smarter than me. That's for sure. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Don't play one. Listen to your doctor. Do what works for you. Grandma, I was called for jury duty, and this one lady cried because they didn't choose her. I've never had anybody cry because they were not selected as a juror. I've seen people cry when they were selected for a jury.
I've known a lot of people who were very disappointed that they didn't get chosen for a jury, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think most people want to serve.
I mean, it can be a pain in the butt. I actually, about 7 years ago, I actually got picked for a jury. Now, luckily, it was a one-day case.
Yeah.
It's inconvenient enough when it's one day. Imagine, some of the trials we've had that last 4 weeks, or yeah, it can be incredibly inconvenient. But it's kind of the ultimate in citizen involvement in our system, and it's. So I get wanting to do it. I think it's if you get the opportunity to serve, I do think for people who aren't in the professions that we're in, I do think it's very enlightening to go through the process and understand how it works, and just the whole voir dire, the whole selection process, all of that. It's really interesting.
I've never had somebody come back and complain, "Oh, jury duty sucked." Most people find it rather interesting, and they thought it was all very positive experience, and
it's your duty,
and that's the biggest thing. It's like it is inconvenient, and there's no good time for jury service to come up.
No,
but it's your civic obligation to do so. The system can't work if people ignore their jury summons.
Right. It got so bad there for a while. Remember a couple of years ago where up in Weld County, the sheriff was sent out by the judge to pick up people off the street?
Yep.
Because people were ignoring their jury summonses.
Yeah, and if you think about it, other than kind of, having to pay your taxes, the government really doesn't ask that much of you normally, right?
Not normally, right.
Pay your taxes, avoid obey the traffic signals, and don't harm other people. And if we send you a jury summons, will you please respond?
And vote.
And you should vote. Absolutely. Everybody should vote.
Yep.
Still get the flu. Let's see. Yes. It's your duty. Become an exclusive member of CrimeTalk. That's right. You should subscribe. Just Jake says, I loved serving on jury duty. And that is my general experience, where everybody truly, I think, generally thought it was a good experience. So, all right, Mark, how you feeling?
I feel great.
You gonna have another cigar?
I think I am going to have another cigar.
I think you should have another cigar. We'll go a little bit longer here. We'll maybe have another cigar, and then
this is one that
we'll go.
My daughter brought me from Ecuador. She was in Ecuador for 4 months studying abroad, and so she brought me back a cigar.
Nice.
Yeah, so I know nothing about it, but I'm excited to try it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Your daughter, I mean, she's a very impressive young woman.
Thank you. I agree with you.
She's still doing the gymnastics, right, in college, or
nope? She she did it starting at about, I think, 5 or 6 years old. Did it all the way through high school. Her team went to the state tournament 4 years in a row, and then she was done after high school. Then she coached the little kids. She did that for, I think, 3 years. Absolutely loved it, but just got so busy with college and other things going on that she had to give that up. So she's only not been coaching, I think, for about 9 or 10 months now.
Yeah, well, that's good. And she loved Ecuador?
Oh, she loved Ecuador. And,
the people?
She did. She really loved. She went the last 2 months she spent in an indigenous village, living with a family, and it was she loved it. She was actually when she got back, she was very sad. She really missed it and could see herself going back again to the village. Yeah.
Is she fluent in Spanish?
She is. In fact, she's the only certified, I guess, if you will, tour guide, Spanish-speaking tour guide at the University of Denver.
Oh.
So yeah, she's fluent. She just had a great time. We went down and saw her. We had a great time.
That's great.
So
she should come talk to Frank. Frank is quite fluent in Spanish.
Nice.
Frank's, I always forget, you're Venezuelan, but you grew up in America because your dad worked for a big company, GE. But then you went back, and then because you kind of left because it was kind of the guy down there, the communist guy, kind of ruined everything. Frank doesn't like communists. That's good.
Me either, Frank.
That's why we like Frank, man.
Yep. We don't like him either.
All right, so all right, Julie, this is your chance. You're not going to waste any of these. These are all good. Well, I'm going to have this little Monte Cristo, if you look at this bad boy. I had an associate that used to work for me, and she turned out to be a great lawyer. She doesn't work with me anymore. We actually are doing a case together now, and she smoked cigars, and I'm like, because I had like a cigar aficionado in my conference room or whatever, and she came to me. She had no experience, right out of school, and I think I was the only one that said she'd sent out resumes and nobody would, hire her. And I've always been a firm believer, if somebody sends you a resume, or at least talk to them. Even if you don't, maybe you can direct them to the right people. Because I've been very fortunate in my career where I've talked to people like, hey, I'm interested in this area of law, or hey, could you answer a question for me? And, they've turned out to become friends, and it doesn't help on the referral business either. But my interest is always truly, I'm curious about this particular area of law or what have you. So I've always tried to reciprocate, because those people took a few moments and gave me the opportunity to speak with them. And so I always thought, well, if somebody does that to me, I'll do it. So she sent me a resume right out of school, had moved to Colorado, wanted to do criminal defense, just every ounce of her being. And she overheard a conversation with another attorney in my office who's now a judge. And it was I think she heard something about, it was a child abuse resulting in death case that we were working on. And she literally was like, I heard that. I was like, I gotta work here. And so I was like, I've had associates. They never usually work out. I train the competition. They leave me. I'm not sure I'm ready up for that, because I had another associate one at a time, and kind of a weird story where she came in and said, I'm quitting to go work for the guy that referred you to me. He didn't have enough work, but he said, maybe you could. She's really smart. And she was very smart, very good attorney. And I was like, really? You're going to work for him? The guy that doesn't have enough work? Like, really? You really want to do that? Oh, okay. So anyway, so it's just one of those things. I always try to talk with them. And she wanted to do it. She's like, oh my God, I got to do this. And I was like, really not sure how much I'm going to pay you. She's like, literally, I work for free. I'm like, well, I'm not going to have you work for free. But she did it. So, people should take the time to do that. If somebody says, hey, I got a question about, whatever, how can I do that?
I would imagine it's very hard to get your foot in the door as a brand new out of law school, just passed the bar exam criminal defense attorney. I mean, because if you don't go to work for the public defender's office to start out, and get that experience, I mean, there so many defense attorneys are just solo practitioners.
Yeah.
So there's just not a lot of avenues probably to to get on with somebody and kind of start from the bottom and work your way up.
Yeah, and my firm is a bigger firm, so to speak. I mean, we have 5 attorneys total, but we're considered a large criminal defense firm, so to speak, which I never think of myself that way, but they say that we are. Frank, I somehow managed to screw it up and I lost the chat. Can you help fix this, please? Sorry. Yeah, I'll plug in, or you can do it here. All right. So, Frank is fixing that for us, so I can see the chat here without kicking us off the entire stream. We'll go from there. All right. For those of you keeping score at home, yes, this is both Mark's and mine second cigar.
This one is not burning very even.
See, there should be a law against that.
I know.
It's probably dried out a little bit from coming all the way from Ecuador.
It might be. It's really good. It's really smooth. But yeah, I think it is dried out a little bit.
Yeah, it's sometimes cigars don't travel well.
Yeah.
Big Chewhungus and public defender's workload tends to be insane. That it does. They have a lot of cases. Scott, do you think they'll ever solve the John Bonet case?
I do.
You think they will?
I think on somebody's deathbed they're going to come forward. I really do. And there's been so many advancements in DNA and how they can get it, how they can extract it, how little, what little material they can pull it from. I do think there'll be a breakthrough at some point.
I think so too. I think somebody, somewhere, someone, somewhere knows what happened. Mm-hmm. Somebody's been told. Somebody was in a alcohol-induced blabber conversation and spitted something out. And I think somebody will, in fact, come true.
Yep,
They may not ever prosecute somebody, but I think the truth will come out at some point.
Yeah. I don't think anybody will ever be prosecuted.
No, I think it'll be too difficult.
Yeah.
And, old cases like that she would be like in her 30s now. I think I saw, it was like the 30th anniversary, right? Wasn't she like 6? She'd be like in her mid 30s now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
mid-30s.
there's been a lot of advancements in the cold case investigations, primarily because of the DNA thing. But, there's a lot of departments now, not even just bigger departments, that have dedicated detective to cold cases.
Yeah, which is good.
It's fantastic.
Usually because they got grants.
Yep.
Somebody says, Michael, in case you missed it, Scott, ever given any flack in court from fellow attorneys or court staff for what you do here on YouTube? Nope. Not a single issue. I've had court staff come up to me and say, oh my God, Scott, I listen to you on YouTube or your podcast. I listen all the time. That's great. And, we don't talk about anything, too controversial. I mean, we talk about cases and, if somebody's got a problem with it, they should come tell me, but I don't think we do anything. We're not doing anything over the top that should offend anybody. We're talking about the legal process and how it works. How would anybody be opposed to that?
Well, and it's also mostly just opinion based. I mean, whether if it's cases that you've been involved in, it's not like you're giving facts and giving out information. And if it's other, nationally known cases or whatever, it's just kind of,
here's the facts, what we know.
Right. And here's my opinion on it.
And this is where we think things are going to go and how they're going to progress.
Right.
Let me explain the issues to you that you're not going to get on that 30-second news spot.
Right.
So, no, I haven't had any flack. And actually, I've had lots of people say, hey, can I come on your show? And it's usually a scheduling issue. And I'd love talking to other attorneys about, their case. I think the most interesting one is always asking, like, knowing what you know now, would you go to law school? Or would you tell your kids to go to law school? My typical answer to that is, it depends on what they want to do with it, right? Because there's so many people that go to law school that never practice law.
Right.
A lot of them go into like public policy type stuff, and frankly, I don't think you need a law degree to do that. You can save yourself a heck of a lot of money just by becoming a resident expert in something like that. I can't remember. Somebody agrees with you, Mark. It'll be on their deathbed. Yeah, I think it's 25 years ago. That's okay. So she'd be in her early 30s if she were still alive. Viking Helga. Turn off the heater. The guys are turning red. Well, the heater is automatic. It's set, I guess. Are you guys hot? No. Okay. I think it's 75. Yeah, it is a little warm at a few moments, but I'd much rather be hot. I guess we could open the door a little bit, but.
Oh, it's fine. It's comfortable.
Yeah. She was 6 and it was 1996, so not quite 30 years ago.
So 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So she'd be 31. 32?
Yeah.
Yep.
There's always someone that knows
it's
it.
2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, somebody said she'd be 30. Laura, she'd be 32 today.
Wow.
Connie Underwood, my son just took the LSATs. Good for him.
That's
Wants to be a prosecutor. Hopes he gets into CU.
To see you personally, or to the University of
University
Colorado?
of Colorado.
Oh,
CU.
okay. All right.
Good school. I think CU still only takes a class of 100 students per year. DU takes a few, I think 300 total, including their evening division.
Is there just the 2 law schools? That's the only 2 I know of in Colorado.
Yeah, there's just 2 in Colorado, CU and DU. So good luck, Connie. I hope your son does well on the LSATs and gets into the school of his choice. I guess my advice would be is if you're going to go to law school, go to a state school, okay? Because generally, nobody cares where you go to law school. Nobody cares. The only thing that matters is that you get a law license. That's the only thing that matters. I was talking today with a prosecutor in Adams County. Old guy, used to be in Denver, and now he's in Adams. Good guy. We've battled it out over the years, but now it's like, you still doing this stuff? I'm like, I'm still doing. What are you doing? Well, I got a couple more years left, you know. And you know, we're like, man, things have changed. Like, things have just changed so much. But anyway, so I mean, we were. I forgot what I was going to say. So I saw this prosecutor. What was I going to say about it? I forgot. Anyway, I was thinking a couple things ahead here. Oh, look, Mama Pink's been a criminal defense attorney member for 9 months now. It just popped up. How cool is that? Where is Miss Winnie? Well, Miss Winnie was invited to come this evening, but the lovely Miss Kristen had lots of work to do, so she was going to stay at home and work. Ooh, good question. Mark, what was the most satisfying case you helped solve as a police officer or an investigator, or both?
There was a sex assault on a child case. It was actually 2 victims, and we had a very strong suspect and absolutely believed that we had the right person, and it took probably 3 hours of, whether you want to call it interviewing or interrogation, and he finally came clean, and so that was satisfying because it was quite a few years ago, and there was concern that those 2 victims' kids were now going to be victimized by him also. And so we did not have really any evidence. And so without a confession, I don't think we would have ever been able to charge him.
Because as a police officer and help prosecute the case, yeah, you like a statement that somebody did something, but you always want some corroboration to that, correct?
Well, absolutely, because there can be a variety of reasons why a confession gets thrown out, or, you know, we were very careful in how we did it. You know, you and I watch a lot of interviews, and for me at least, as someone who trained detectives and stuff, you can see when they're sort of pushing up really close to that line, you know, and either in what they're saying or how they're saying it, or the environment or the conditions, or what. One of the ones for me that's always a red light is, you know, they're doing an interview. They're in the police department. They're doing an interview, and the person says, "Well, I don't know. Maybe I should talk to my lawyer." And it's always interesting when you see how a detective tries to get around that.
Sure.
You know, I personally don't think I would have ever tried to get around that. To me, that's a pretty clear-cut one.
But the courts say, do I need a lawyer? Should I talk to a lawyer?
Right.
That's not an unequivocal request for an attorney.
True.
And so a lot of detectives will be like, all right, hey, well, if you want an attorney, then the interview is going to stop and I won't get to hear your side of the story.
Exactly.
And then they're like, well, okay, hold on, sit down. And a good cop will be like, all right, I just want to make absolutely clear, you have a right to an attorney. We can stop at any time, bro.
Yep.
And makes that thing bulletproof in the sense that.
And so when I see those, like, you'll see, I had one recently. I was watching an interview, and they came in, they sat down, and the detective said, "Now, do you remember when they read you your rights out there?" Okay, and that was it. And
no,
and to me that was, wow, that's a no-no. I know a lot of cops are kind of afraid that, well, if I reiterate that, they're going to realize it's so important, and then they're not going to talk to me and whatever. I would rather not have an interview than have an interview that gets thrown out.
But they always talk.
Yes, they do. They almost always talk.
Seriously.
Yes.
They almost always talk.
Yep.
And the only way they don't talk is if somebody says, hey, man, I think you should talk to a lawyer. And you call the lawyer first. Because if you call the detective calls the suspect and says, hey, can I talk with you? Whether it be on the phone or in person, they schedule a time, then game over. I mean,
you know what the biggest giveaway or the biggest clue for that should be when there's a police involved shooting. The officers involved are brought back to the police department and they are interviewed also. And do you know that none of them will talk to the investigator without their attorney being present? So the cops know enough.
I have spoken to many a police officer over the years. I've represented many a police officer over the years. And the first thing they do is lawyer up.
Yes, they do. Because they know that's the smart thing to do.
Exactly. They know.
Yep.
They know. I think they teach that in cop school, right?
Mm-hmm.
They teach them that. I mean, think about it. Even if there's an officer-involved shooting.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Everybody gets a lawyer.
Yep.
Nobody has to make a statement until all the lawyers going to talk and figure out what's going on. And you get to kind of like see the evidence.
Right.
This is what we're thinking may have happened, right? That shiny thing was a gun, right? Yeah, it's a gun. Yeah.
No, it's, like I said, that should be a clue that police officers won't talk without their lawyer present. So why would anybody else?
Because they think they just... I just need to wrap this up. This is an inconvenience. Let me just tell them my side of the story. This will all just go away.
Or I can outsmart them. I'm charming. They'll believe me.
Yep.
And I think of a couple clients in particular that you and I have shared that, they just always knew better. They were sure they could convince anybody of anything.
Yep. And we're talking about, corroboration. The client is accused of doing X, just say whatever, did something. And the client's, well, yeah, I mean, I was there, and yeah, I was drinking, and yeah, she was, but it was, nothing happened, right? But the police know, they have the DNA or whatever. And so the cop are like, oh, it was consensual. And the cops look at it, it's like, well, you just corroborated 95% of the victim's story here. You're denying the criminal part of it, but you've corroborated everything else. So the police look at it and say, well, you're just lying about that. You're doing what everybody does. Deny at that point. But they got you on all the other stuff. They put you at your location. I've had homicide cases where we got to trial. They couldn't even put my guy at the scene. And clients wanted to go in and talk. And I just want to explain. No. You don't even want to put yourself there.
Well, I can't think of how many murder cases I've had where they've gone in and talked and they've said, well, I was there and I pointed the gun at the guy, but I didn't shoot him. Or I was there and, we were just robbing the guy, but I wasn't the one that shot him. Well,
you just admitted to felony
murder, right? So,
yeah.
And I just think, man, it's frustrating because it doesn't matter. I've seen attorneys that hand out cards that have, your Miranda advisal on the back, and they highlight the,
mine.
Your attorney, yeah. Oh, you have that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't matter how many times you tell a client. We've had a lot of repeat clients, right? And it doesn't matter how many times you tell them, they still make those same statements.
The back of my card. I refuse to consent to any search of my premises, the location of my arrest, my car, or effects. I wish to exercise my rights under the 5th and 6th Amendment to remain silent and to have my attorney present during any questioning or lineup. If you ignore my exercise of these rights and attempt to procure a waiver, I wish to confer with my attorney prior to any conversation with law enforcement agents on the subject of waiver, which is lawyer.
Right. And you don't even have to say I want a lawyer. You just slide that card out there. Set it in front of them.
I've had my card show up in Discovery where people are literally like, oh my, like, Yeah, he's like, hold on a second. Pulls it out of his wallet.
Yeah.
My attorney said to give this to you.
Yep,
right
there you
here
go.
it is. And like the cops are like, can we keep that? It's going to be part of the evidence. Sure. I mean, I love it.
It's funny because as a former police detective, what I can tell you is that most of the time when the police are talking to you, especially in a formal setting at the police department, like usually they don't call you in unless they have a really good reason to call. It's not just random. Well, there's a guy walking down the street. I wonder if he knows anything about this murder. Right? Like, so if they're talking to you, there's a reason they're talking to you. And if that's the case, you probably shouldn't be talking.
Absolutely. DFS Donovan, if you are white and live in Denver, do not talk to 9 News in the gist I'm getting. Yeah, don't talk. Just don't talk. Don't talk to the news media. What's that? Oh, yeah, and don't talk to the media. I mean, these people that do jailhouse interviews with the news media, like, are you kidding me? I know your attorney didn't think this was a good idea. Yeah, Alec Baldwin. Did you see that interview?
Yes, that whole case is intriguing.
How somebody is not charged at this point?
I agree. Somebody was negligent and or reckless.
Yeah. I would say minimum negligent. He's pointing a gun at somebody. Didn't bother to check to see if it was loaded,
Nope.
right? And admits to pulling the trigger, an old revolver, right? And you can pull it back once and you can pull it back all the way. But he said he let the hammer go home. I've got an old West revolver. And the guy that sold it to me, we traced the numbers back, and it was issued to an Army officer that was at the Battle of Little Bighorn. So it's a little
Holy
collector's
cow.
piece that I have. And I love it. But as I was cleaning out something the other day, it was in the safe, and I was like, there's no way you're going to send the hammer home unless you pull the trigger. You could ease it back, but not to the point where it's going to strike that firing pin.
Or it'd have to be like one of those old westerns where they're holding it and they're doing that on the hammer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just doing that with your thumb, no,
That's not going to discharge it.
no, it's gonna.
And I think he said he pulled the trigger. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I think he said he pulled the trigger, and then it was, well, the hammer was back, so I eased it back, and it just discharged, which I don't buy that for a second.
With the way special effects are now, why do you have to have any kind of a round in that gun, whether it's a blank or anything else? I mean, that to me that's ridiculous. And the angle of cameras and stuff, you shouldn't even be pointing. I mean, what's the 4 rules to gun safety, and one of them is don't ever point a gun at anything you don't intend to kill.
Yep.
So, or actually, it's to destroy. So, I point it off where they're not, and have the camera set up in such a way that you can't tell whether they're pointing at them or not. But that's just.
If I was the DA down there, and I get it's Alec Baldwin. Have you ever seen when they get a search warrant for your phone?
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, man, just turn it over to us when you get around to it, like a month later.
Yeah, well, no, I've never seen that happen, no.
Now, obviously, the prosecutors have to be very specific as to what they're searching for on that phone. They can't just get a general warrant, because that would be illegal to just go rummage around and say, we're just going to go look here till we find it, what they're looking for. But if Alec Baldwin, I think, made a statement, or his attorneys did, saying, well, we had to decide what was going to be searched and what wasn't. Part of me was kind of like, if you get a copy of the search warrant and it's a general warrant, you let them have it and let them go rummage, and it's all then suppressed.
Right.
But now they narrow it down, like, okay, fine, we're only going to search text messages between these 5 individuals on the date of the incident or thereafter. Suddenly it's a good warrant.
And since when did the defense attorneys or the witnesses' attorneys get to determine when a piece of evidence is turned over or when a phone is turned in? You know what I mean? That's just that's handling with that's just such a kid glove thing. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, sir, if that was you or me, they would have shown up on your doorstep. We got a warrant.
And they was, give me your phone.
Give me your phone. And they'd have local authorities up there in New Hampshire or New York, wherever he was, saying, they're here to make sure that you give me the phone.
Yep.
Not turn it over at your convenience
Yeah,
in the next month, right? Yeah, no. If I was the prosecutor, and I'm not saying, everyone should just go around prosecuting everybody, but I think I would charge just about everybody that was involved with the handling of that firearm. And, the armorer, Alec Baldwin, anybody that's in the kind of chain of command that was responsible for that, charge them all, sort it out later. And I'm not a big fan of that, but I would do that.
Well, you think about the Kim Potter case.
Mm-hmm.
So how was what she did so different from this case involving Alec Baldwin, right? I mean, it was an accident. And everybody's, it's an accident. Well, just because something is an accident doesn't mean it's not a crime. We have DUI crashes all the time where people die. It's an accident, but it's still criminal.
Yep.
And, to me, it's no different than the Kim Potter case. And I think we briefly talked about that the last time I was here. My take was, it's a terrible accident, but it's still negligent and or reckless. And I think the jury got it right.
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily agree with, and I'm not, criticizing them, but, reckless is like, I know I'm holding a gun when I thought I was holding my thing, but I'm doing it anyway. I think she truly thought that she had her taser.
Then it's negligent.
But I think it was negligent.
Right. And I think that's no different than the Alec Baldwin thing. Mm-hmm. He thought there were blanks in there. And he pointed it at somebody and he pulled the trigger. So whether it's, to me, the person that's holding the gun, that's pointing it at him, that's pulling the trigger, ultimately it's your responsibility.
Yeah. The only thing I don't like about negligence when it comes to criminal law is negligence is a civil standard. What would a reasonable person, is it reasonably foreseeable that something could take place? Whereas criminal law is like it's not a reasonable man standard. It's what was the person's intent in their mind? Like, did you knowingly do something, right? Reckless is still a criminal standard, but negligence is a reasonable person standard. What would a reasonable person do in these circumstances? And I just got a real problem with negligence in the criminal law arena. But I agree. I mean, there's so many things that are negligent that's crime.
Well, and that's kind of the basis of the vehicular homicide when it comes to to DUI, right? I mean, they're not charging them with vehicular homicide because of reckless driving. They're charging them with essentially vehicular homicide because of the negligence of getting behind the wheel drunk, and right? I mean,
well, it's actually a strict liability offense. They don't have to prove your mental state.
Right, there you go.
They just say
you did it.
You were driving, your BAC was above 0.08, somebody was injured, so you got a vehicular assault, or somebody died and it's vehicular homicide. Your BAC was this, that's it. It's kind of, they don't have to prove, well, I didn't intend to hurt anybody. Well, nobody ever does, right?
Right, which is, again, kind of the Alec Baldwin situation. Well, I wasn't intending to hurt anybody.
But you did.
But you pointed a gun at them, and you pulled the trigger, and they died.
Yeah. I just don't believe his story. His story about how he was manipulating the firearm doesn't make sense. And maybe I'm not understanding exactly what he said, but when he said he pulled the hammer back, well, the only way that hammer's going home
is if you pull the trigger.
And if you ease it back, you still kind of have to pull the trigger to release the sear, but you're not going to hit it hard enough to strike the firing pin.
Well, and I agree with that, and I guess my point even further is, and if you weren't pointing the gun at them to begin with, right? It's kind of like, hunting is a big deal in Colorado, and at least one time every year, we see somebody charged in a hunting accident. Yeah. And it's an accident.
Yeah. I mean, look at the vice president at one point. Remember, he's out there shooting his shotgun shells and, it was just a terrible accident.
Yeah, right.
They blame the other guy. Oh, if you hadn't walked in front of him, he never would have, you wouldn't have got all that buckshot in your rear end. I mean, it's A lot of it depends on who you are, apparently.
Yeah, that's probably the case with a lot of things.
Let's see. Avery, that's the case where the guy was... Kiki, Rosie, Armour, and Baldwin should both be charged. I can't disagree.
I don't disagree.
I agree. It's just that there's the law to protect the innocent. I agree with you, though. Well, I had a law professor say once that the law protects the ignorant and punishes the stupid. Right? I think what Alec Baldwin was doing was just stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And he should be probably punished for that. Grandma, nobody's reasonable these days. That standard is fast disappearing. Well, that's why it comes down to what a jury decides is reasonable and the societal norms of the community.
Right.
And those do, in fact, differ quite a bit. And if I was going to represent Alec Baldwin, he's not been charged, and obviously we'll give him the presumption of innocence. But if he were charged, I wouldn't want a bunch of gun people on that jury.
No, absolutely not.
Because they're going to hold them to even a higher standard of you should have known better.
Well, it's kind of like the discussions you and I had about a case that we had in southern Colorado.
Yeah.
About, you're right, environments or communities where guns are a big part of their culture, and by and large they're very careful and they're very safe, and that I think they're going to be a lot more critical of how somebody's handling a firearm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to hold them to that higher standard of I'm a gun owner, and
right.
Because of people making poor decisions, that just kind of reflects negatively upon lots of people. If Star Trek can fire photon torpedoes, then the film industry can use fake guns.
Amen.
I would think with all the technology today, I mean, you could have people run around going pew, pew, pew all day long and just add the sound effects.
Yeah.
They just go out and create that on a stage somewhere, go to a firing range and create the shots being fired, and they can make it look real. Most of it's done that way anyway. Lion swimmer. To be fair, on the set there is a chain of command and job duties for each position. Actor's job is not to check the weapons. Baldwin had asked both Armour and the assistant director if the gun was safe. It was their job. Some people will say it's ultimately the gun owners, the person who has the gun in their hand.
Yep, I completely agree.
Kind of the captain of the ship theory, that you're the one that's ultimately responsible for what happens or what does not happen. Kind of like when I go flying. I'm the ultimate one. It could be a beautiful day, but, I got a light that comes on. We're not flying today. The weather's bad. People say we got to go. I'm like, we're not going. It's not safe. I did that on New Year's. Those crazy winds that resulted in all those homes being burned down in Louisville. I was watching the weather, and I was like, it's like they're talking 100-knot winds, and it's just literally 10 miles from where we're sitting right now. And I was like, it's not safe. And I said, we're gonna have to do something I don't like to do, called flying commercial. Ugh.
Well, it's what you're talking about. Even on a commercial airliner, ultimately the pilot still walks around. Even, I don't care what commercial airline you're flying. So whether it's you and your personal plane or whether it's a commercial pilot, they still walk around and check their own airplane.
Yep. And that captain will say, we're not going anywhere.
Right.
The paperwork's not right.
And so I understand there were other people on the set that had responsibilities, but ultimately, if I'm the one that's got to stand there and point the gun at somebody and pull the trigger, I'm going to look myself and make darn sure that there's no live rounds in there.
It'll ultimately be determined by insurance companies.
Probably.
Because insurance companies drive everything.
Yep.
You can have this car, but the insurance is going to be this. Oh, you can have this airplane, but if you want us to insure it, you're going to have to go do recurrency training. You're going to have this, boom. You're going to have it all done to check the boxes for the insurance company, because if something happens, they're going to say, didn't check that box. Sorry, you're not covered. Same thing when it comes to that movie set. They're, I'm sure they've gone through those insurance documents so thoroughly right now.
And you may, something like this may result in insurance companies saying, well, we will insure your film on set, but if you're going to be pointing a gun at somebody, your premium is $25 million instead of $750,000.
Yep. The whole world is driven by the insurance companies control everything.
Yep.
They control it all. Texas Gigi. I like this new format. Well, we kind of do this Tuesday night. It just depends. We've had Mark on one previous time, and it's just nice sitting around chatting. And tonight, like I said, we talked about we should smoke cigars. Yeah, let's do that. It's cold outside. Can't smoke in the CrimeTalk studios. So we're going to go to the CrimeTalk hangar and do it. And we got the heater going. It's nice and toasty.
It is. It's
Don't have to worry about it. 6 cents Amelia, New Zealand. Very strict firearm laws. I don't understand any of this topic. Well, sorry. It was this shooting set on the set of Alec Baldwin's thing. It's careless. But, in America, we love our guns. We love those things. But as I say all the time, they complicate everything.
Yep.
They complicate everything. Chandler Halderson trial. We talked about that earlier. DFS Donovan should smoke some legal Colorado blunts next time.
Then I couldn't drive home.
It'd be illegal, and I don't do that stuff.
Yeah,
I just don't do that stuff.
I don't either. I have no problem with anybody that does. It's just not my thing.
And this is where people are going to say, "Oh my God, Scott, you were such a." I've never tried it. Never had any desire to do it. I was, in sports, in the military. In that age, I just never had the opportunity to do it. And I had an older brother who has gotten so much trouble and has done every imaginable drug under the sun. And I saw what pain it brought, my parents. So I just never did the stuff.
If you had to put a percentage on all the criminal defense cases that you've done in 22 years, what percentage involved drugs or alcohol? 98?
I was thinking 98, 99%.
Yep, I'd agree.
Sex, drugs, and alcohol.
Well, and
a combination of all
with
of those.
Drugs and alcohol. Yep.
Usually the case.
Yep.
But yeah, there's usually some illicit drug involved at some point. And I would say 98, 99%.
Yep, I agree.
I mean, it's the exception to the rule where you have somebody, let's say a little domestic violence case. First thing the prosecutors say, was there drugs and alcohol? And no, they were completely sober. They just don't like each other.
The exceptions that I can think of are the 8-year-old, the sex assault on a child cases that are 6 or 8 or 10 years old, and nobody knows 10 years ago at that moment whether somebody was under the influence. So
yeah,
that's the only exceptions really I can think of. Even the overwhelming majority of domestic violence cases that I've ever been involved with,
drugs and alcohol.
Yeah,
usually
one
alcohol.
or both of them.
Yep. And even on those child cases, usually there's somebody kind of, hey, do you want some alcohol?
Frequently.
You want some drugs? Kind of grooming them, getting them into the process, getting them, to feel comfortable, trust me. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. It is. It's just the reality of it.
And drugs or alcohol,
and nobody ever believes the people that are like in the business, so to speak.
Right.
And I'm very libertarian. Like, hey, you can do what you want. You want to smoke your weed or do drugs, fine. But as soon as you harm somebody else, that's where it stops.
Yep.
Right. And Let's see. Do you know about the OtterBox owner getting ripped off for millions in Fort Collins? Haven't heard a thing about it.
I haven't heard of that one. OtterBox, that's the phone case, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very successful company. I knew a lady that worked for a friend of mine that was his executive assistant and then went to work for them. Very good company to work for. She's been there a long time. Let's see. Hey, neighbor. Yes, imagine if it was easy to get your hands on a gun like in the States. Every mad person would be killing their enemy. So much bullying in schools. It's so bad. Paygirl, Peigirl, 1985. We do have a lot of guns.
Yes, we do.
But if you look at the number of guns that are here and the gun violence, statistically speaking, is pretty low. More people actually die from knives than guns when you look at the statistics overall. I mean, it's...
I know there's roughly 300 million legal guns in the country and roughly 40 million legal gun owners. As I've always said, if legal gun owners were the problem, you would know it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and rarely do you get a quote legal gun owner case.
Very rarely.
Right? Usually it's like a home defense type situation and the case goes away because somebody was in the house and they shouldn't have been there.
Or legal gun owner drove home drunk, got pulled over for DUI and had a gun in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And then
or
he's charged with,
maybe a road rage or something. But
yeah.
And occasionally the guy that gets upset with his neighbor, but usually then there's some drugs and alcohol or something
Exactly.
goes on. But neighbor disputes. When you're a police officer, I swear to God, I won't take cases involving neighbor disputes. I did a couple of those years ago, and I was like, I will never do these again.
There's a lot of them, and it's amazing how some of that can get out of hand. I had a neighbor where I live now. He's no longer a neighbor. They moved, but was an ongoing neighbor dispute between him and another neighbor, and he was caught on their surveillance camera pouring gasoline all over their lawn, killed their whole lawn, and he got charged with a felony. Yeah, that neighbor stuff can get pretty crazy.
It gets crazy.
Yep.
Your kid's ball came into my driveway from your basketball hoop that the kids were playing on, and get off my lawn.
Yeah.
If you come on my lawn, I'm going to go get my, gun that's going to, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. 6 cents. Legal guns are where criminals get them from. Well,
some of them
is here. Sometimes. I remember I had a couple cases a while back where they wanted to charge people for taking guns to Mexico, but the agents let the guns go to Mexico. And I was like, charge my guy. Charge him. I beg you. No file. Because they couldn't get the guns in Mexico back because there's they disappear.
Well,
how's the chain of custody going to work on that one?
That would be a bad precedent since we had our federal government that decided to give a bunch of guns to Mexico. So that would be a bad precedent.
They let a lot of them go south of the border to
Yep.
Yeah. But guns are really strictly controlled in Mexico, and they got a lot of gun violence down there. Funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Funny. Grandma, Castle Doctrine here in Texas. We call it Make My Day.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new case that just came out the other day. A guy goes and confronts a homeless guy it was like a house. There was a Victorian home in Colorado Springs that was converted to apartments. And they were like, a homeless guy in the common area.
Yeah,
the corridor.
Yeah.
Guy goes down and says, hey, you need to get out of here. And the guy gets aggressive, and the guy shoots him.
Mm-hmm.
Make My Day. Supreme Court went all the way to Supreme Court and said, nope, case dismissed. It covers that. Heck, there for a while, Make My Day covered prison cells.
Well,
that was their home.
Yes, absolutely.
They had to rewrite the statute.
Yep. Well, the new one that several states have that's starting to gain traction is that whole duty to retreat thing. What do they call that?
Stand your ground.
The stand your ground law. Yeah. That's kind of a popular topic now too. I know that most of the states that have that tend to be red-leaning states, but that's an interesting.
Well, under the law of most states, you don't have a duty to retreat, but juries sometimes get confused on that because prosecutors were allowed to say, well, he could have retreated, and the law is you don't have to retreat.
Right.
If you feel
is that the law in every state? I don't think it is it?
Not in every state, but in most states, the general principle is certainly don't go around shooting people based upon what I say here. Consult your local attorney for the specific law of your land. And as a general rule, don't shoot anybody, even if you think you're right, because it just creates a lot of issues. And I've represented people that have shot people and it's been declared justified, but it still messes with them because they took a human life. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So general rule, like I said, I love firearms. I've got an arsenal, but they complicate everything. It's kind of the last resort. It is a great equalizer. If there are 4 people coming at you and it's you and your firearm, it is a great equalizer. It is now a fair fight, so to speak.
Yep.
But be prepared.
You don't shoot people if they're still in your car.
Your property.
Your property. That's pretty clear.
Mm-hmm. I remember in the military, even standing guard duty as a young enlisted guy, you get your general orders. If somebody's stealing a nuclear weapon, you can take them out. But just about everything else, no.
Yep.
And that was the rare circumstance where they actually gave you live ammunition and like, here you go, you got live rounds, we're giving you 10, we better have 10 when we come back and get you in a couple of hours, right? Pay girl, what happened to using your fists? Nah, people don't fight like that anymore.
No, unfortunately.
That was like in the 1950s. People would show up with a switchblade or something. These days everybody has guns, but most of the clients that I get, they're not lawful gun owners. So usually they're prohibited persons.
Right.
Mama Pink, my dog is barking to go to bed. It's past my bedtime. Well, we're just about done here, so we'll let you do that. Looks like Mark's cigar is just about done.
We've almost
my second one's just about done. Frank and Julie look like they're just about done. And Julie didn't even have a cigar. She said she was going to have a car. Crime Talk, please see 6 Cents Amelia's question. All right, let me go back up here. Pay girl, we just can't wrap my head around guns. But people in Canada hunt. I mean, they love everyone I know from Canada has been like a hunter. 6 Cents Amelia, could you please direct my question to Mark Scott? I don't want to spam the chat. All right, let me go back up here. 6 cents. Let me go back. I'm going back up. The chat goes by rather quickly.
Is there a cold case that really bugs me? There wasn't any that occurred when I was a police officer, but I pulled an old file that we had in the jurisdiction where I worked, and it was a murder. A body was found in the trunk of a car at a gas station, and I was intrigued by it. I didn't know where to start on it or what to do with it, so I never did anything with it. But I pulled it several times and read over it because they kind of fascinate me. So that's probably the only one that I can think of that I had any kind of sort of personal knowledge of.
Maybe you'd like to be our cold case investigator. People love that cold case stuff.
I have one of my former detectives is now a cold case investigator in a jurisdiction here in Colorado.
Really?
And some pretty high profile cases that have recently been solved. So it's very interesting.
Would they like to come talk to us about the case? Maybe there's a lead that they're trying to get.
He might. I will reach out to him. Okay, I'll reach out to him.
I'll
tell you afterwards.
That'd be cool. Because oftentimes the police do go and talk about cases like we need information.
Absolutely.
And the cold case, the true crime community is amazing. There's so many I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen that case. It was a documentary called Don't Kill Cats or something to that effect.
Yes, I watched the whole thing. It was fascinating.
Wasn't it? Yeah, Don't F with
mess-
Cats.
Yep.
That was it. Where these people got so outraged that this guy turned out he's like killing people.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people that have time. We've had stuff sent to me that people said, hey, I've been working on this. Here's a timeline. I'm like, this is completely professional work.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how good everyday citizens can be. And they have time to dig into all those facts. I mean, you know, the problem we have is there's only so many hours in a day. You can hire investigators when they do this and that, paralegals. But at the end of the day, you're still limited to that time period. And, you know, obviously you don't, you know, you got to work the case and, you know, get a continuance if you need it. But, you know, you got speedy trial concerns. Clients want to get the matter resolved. You know, and litigation is like a black hole. There's always something else you can do. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like, where do you stop? That's the problem. Well, go back and talk to somebody else again.
Well, and, you know, and with cold cases, I'm no expert on them, but my experience has been from reading some of the ones that have been solved and stuff is, you know, there's really only two things that are going to, you know, make that case solvable. And that's either a person coming forward or a piece of evidence that can now be retested. Because it's pretty rare that new evidence shows up.
Yep.
You know, what are you going to, in most cases, what are you going to find 35 years later?
Yeah.
You know,
it's DNA, technology advances.
Right. So it's generally DNA or somebody comes forward.
And the thing I think that's most concerning, like, to criminal defense attorneys, I mean, and I think prosecutors get it these days, like, if they don't have some sort of corroboration, even I think most prosecutors are skeptical of eyewitness ID, so to speak. Because if you look at all the cases where somebody has been exonerated because of DNA evidence, what was the thing that usually got them convicted? Well, a couple people said it looked like the guy that was the guy that probably did it,
right.
You know, and then you talk to these people 20 years later. Yeah, I really don't know, but I was working my case off and they said, just go ahead and, you know, work with me here. And, you know, that's probably what happened and your case is going to go away. And yeah.
Well, and, you know, now because of the prevalence of video cameras everywhere, I mean, there's still, you know, ID is still an issue in terms of what a witness says, but it's pretty rare that you work any kind of a serious case, a homicide case, a robbery case, whatever, that there's not some kind of video footage. Yeah. And the cameras are of such incredible quality that, you know, they're not just some blurry photograph or blurry surveillance anymore. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So it's pretty rare that I work any of those kind of cases that don't have video.
What I saw something that I didn't know about, but when I had some bikes stolen from my house, you know, I made the police report so insurance can take care of it. The detective calls me up and says, you know, do you have video? Well, I got a Ring doorbell. Do you know of others? You know, and I've since installed a super fancy security system. But the officer said, I'm going to send out an email to all the people in the neighborhood that have a Ring doorbell.
Yep.
They send an email and say, hey, we're looking for a suspect. Somebody came into a garage and stole bikes on this date. Can we have access to your footage? And all the person has to do is click yes, and that video from that time frame gets immediately downloaded to the police department. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's amazing.
The community where I live, about a year and a half ago, the police department through social media sent out a link asking for homeowners who had Ring doorbells and Vivint or whatever the other one is, or any kind of exterior surveillance equipment, would they agree to give, you know, list their name and address with the police department for that very reason. And so, yeah, they'll send out a blast to the people who opted in, said, this is my address and I have, you know, Ring doorbell. And so, yeah, that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
Just send out an email and, like you said, this date, this time, and, you know, can you go through your footage and see if you have anything, or can we have access to your footage?
And they do it. Ring does it automatically.
Yep.
They say, we're going to isolate this time period in this block.
Yep.
And they hit yes. Boom. There it is.
Yep.
Of course, nothing showed up, but you just never know. I mean, it was probably there, but maybe somebody didn't click yes on that particular one. But yeah, the amount of video these days certainly makes our life
more difficult
because we got to watch it all. I mean, there's so much video.
But as we found out with a few different cases, it's still important that we go to that scene, that neighborhood, and look for video equipment ourselves, because we've had cases, where either the police didn't knock on the door or nobody answered and they never went back, and turns out there was footage.
Yep.
Sometimes it helps.
Yep. No, it's amazing. I mean, this is why I think investigators are so important, not just for ethical reasons to make sure you don't become a witness, but to go out there and walk the scene. And oftentimes, we go to a scene sometimes, maybe it's immediate, like in a homicide case, or it's some, maybe weeks, months down the road, but you still go walk the scene to get the feel for it. And you can always tell on cross-examination or direct examination who's been to the scene and who hasn't.
Yes.
And rarely do the prosecutors go to the scene. Rarely. Unless they were on duty that night and that's like their homicide case.
Right.
They don't go.
No, I think generally you're right.
Let's see here. In Illinois, you have to try to get away before standing your ground. Yeah, the law differs in so many states. It's so confusing. Bottom line is, the best scenario is don't put yourself in a situation that's going to involve something escalating to that point. And that's one of the things that I have to stress so much, and people usually get it. Maybe that's why people, Scott, you're no fun. Is that we've seen the scenarios over and over again. Like, dude, why didn't you just walk away? Right. Well, he disrespected me, and he called my mama a name, and okay, but did you have to do what you did? People, let him call your mama that name. But
have you followed the case in Douglas County of the former police officer that was just charged with second-degree murder? It was kids were driving fast through the neighborhood, and he confronted them. Have you followed that case at all?
I think I remember hearing something about it when it first happened, because he was a former or soon-to-be former police officer or something.
He had just recently become a former police officer, and speeding vehicles up and down the residential street, and he went out and confronted them, and something occurred, and the victim pulled a gun, and he had his gun, and apparently victim shot first, hit him, didn't kill him. He returned fire. I still think it's interesting that he's charged with second-degree murder since he didn't fire first, but
I think that's self-defense written all over it. That's what I would say.
It's going to be an interesting case, but I guess from what as to what you were saying, had he not gone out there with a gun and confronted people, or had he not confronted people at all, and I get it. I'm kind of that guy too. I mean, if something's going on in my front lawn or my neighborhood or in the street in front of my house, I tend to go out.
So what's going on?
What's that?
And see what's going on.
Right, but I think that this day and age, things can escalate so quickly that maybe it's a smarter move just to stay in your house, be a good witness, and call 911.
Exactly.
The gun should be an absolute last resort. My life or that of one of my family members was in immediate danger. I had no choice.
I had to do it.
Right.
Yep. Now, otherwise, you're going to be explaining it to a jury, and you're certainly going to be explaining it to the district attorney why it should be self-defense. And it's just better. I mean, let it go. I mean, you see that in road rage incidents so many times. Somebody gets cut off. They flip him the bird. They want to get close to him. They're going to follow. They're going to show them how to drive. And, somebody has a gun, and next thing you know, it escalates to where somebody's dead. And you're just like, really? That's where we've come to. Like, and you're going to go spend the rest of your life in prison, or a good chunk of it, over somebody cutting you off. They didn't harm you. They didn't injure your car. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen many road rage, and you're just like, but you think to yourself, I've seen this case I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to let it go, or they think, you're driving too slow. It's usually not the case with me, but, there's something there and you're just like, man, let it go. Maybe he's just having a bad day. The wife told him he didn't pick up the right groceries or something. You just never know. So,
no, you're better off if you're well within your rights to carry a gun, and if you're carrying one, you're probably better off to just not put yourself in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, unless your life is immediately in danger, just get out of there.
Yeah. Ty makes a comment here. He says, me and a friend were talking about it. People getting into fights over their shoes being stepped on.
Yes.
There was that shooting down in Lodo where 4 people got shot. I think maybe 4 died. And it was literally over a fight over somebody bumping into them or calling, saying something about their mom.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from news reports. I don't represent anybody in the case. But you're just like, are you kidding me? Like, one guy went to defend his brother, and now his brother's dead, and then innocent victim gets killed. I mean, it's just like, it's so stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't get it. Here's one. News article. 3 Pennsylvania police officers charged with shooting death of 8-year-old at a high school game. I'm not familiar with that case, but
either.
Yeah. Oh, Frank, do you have that video of the dog?
I got it myself.
Oh, do you? Okay. Maybe we can put this up. Or Frank was showing me this video. It's a police officer in Miami, and he's at a house, and he's telling somebody, it's like a little 8-month-old puppy, not a big dog, a puppy, and the dog goes to the police. The police officer, oh my God, get away. And the dog's like not doing anything. Goes out to another police officer. The dog comes over to the other police officer, and it's behind a fence so you can't see it. But you hear like 8 shots fired, and they shot the dog. Now, as a former police officer or everyday citizen, do you think that would be appropriate?
Well, I can't imagine an 8-month-old dog. I mean, a puppy. But as somebody who's been attacked by dogs, an 8-month-old Rottweiler could be a pretty damn big dog.
Yeah, this one looks more like Winnie size. Like, we're talking,
right.
It was a fat dog, and I don't know what the breed was, but the dog didn't look like it was, attacking the officer, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the officer had any bites on him. He was just like, good. And I get it, to be there, it's hindsight's 20/20, but you're thinking, it's a little dog, 8-month-old dog. I mean, they still got puppy teeth.
There's been some pretty prominent cases locally in the last 10 years of police officers shooting dogs. I'm thinking of one in Commerce City in particular. Didn't result in criminal charges, but there was a settlement. There was a civil case. I seem to recall it was a fairly good-sized settlement where it didn't seem like it was necessary.
Yep. Let's see here. Debbie B. Everyone knows we have the best maple syrup. Huge case here many, many years ago about syrup heist in Quebec. Show us them boots, Scott. I don't know if you can see them, but, I don't know. When it snows here, I like to keep my feet dry.
There you go.
These help the best. And you can still wear them with a suit. That's the beautiful thing about it. And like I said, I've seen all of the episodes of Yellowstone, and I have a couple of cowboy hats.
So you qualify.
Practically makes me a cowboy.
Yep, you qualify.
And you haven't seen it yet, but I don't have a truck. You have a truck.
I do.
Nice truck, I might add.
Thank you.
So you never have a truck when you need one, right?
That's why I bought one finally.
Exactly. And the lovely Miss Kristen's not a big truck fan. She's like, I don't know if we can be friends if you drive a truck. I just don't know. I'm like, but trucks these days are not like, this old pickup truck, from the 70s.
Mine's a pretty luxury vehicle.
They're luxury vehicles.
Yeah.
I mean, they're nice. Anyway, so I'm looking one day. I was like, you know what? I want to have something so when we go fly fishing, you don't have to take all the stuff apart and all the rods. So one day I'm searching and I used to have an old Land Rover 1 or whatever it was years ago, early 2000s. I loved that car. Loved it. It was a beast in the snow. So I'm thinking, I'm gonna get me a Land Rover. So I bought this used Land Rover. What a money pit that thing has turned out to be. My God. But I got my, the lovely Miss Kristen got me a fly fishing rack, you know, the kinds that go on top so you can stick your rod and reel in there. You don't have to disassemble it all the time.
Just throw it in the back of a pickup with the bed cover.
I know. Well, this is on top, so it's pretty nice. And, but, you know, so the back, you know, I'm like, oh, got a little spot for Winnie. We can go fly fishing. We can cook bratwurst after the end of the day. It's going to be great.
That's a good day.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be fabulous. She goes, we haven't gone fishing in a while. I'm like, we're going to go. Like, we're going to go more. Because we just haven't had the right car.
Right.
So I get this car, and the guy that it sells to me took good care of it. You know, his wife drove it. Like, oh, it's good to go. I'll take it. Within a week, it's like, I take it. I was like, okay, I need some new tires. So I'm taking it to the store, new tires. I get it back $4,000 later. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? I'm like, oh my God. So then I get it back. Like, everything's running great. Now, I don't think there's any correlation between the fact that the lovely Miss Kristen drove the Land Rover and the next time I drove it, the engine light came on. I don't think there's any correlation.
Coincidence.
I think it's just a mere coincidence.
Yep.
Although she will overthink it and blame herself. And, oh my God, I broke the car. She had nothing to do with it. So I take it this time. I was like, you know, I'm not taking it to this general place. I'm going to take it to a Land Rover specialist. It's like, oh yeah, I need some new spark plugs, wires, maybe new coil because it's running a little rough. I'm like, okay, that's great. What's that going to cost me? $2,000.
Oh my God.
And I have yet to go fly fishing in this at all. And it's probably going to be sitting up here most of the time.
Yeah, it'll be parked back here next time we do a show from here.
And I had to turn down. He's like, well, do you want me to do this, this, and this? You know, like all the drain the... No, because then you're going to tell me something else is wrong with it. I said, but just out of curiosity, what would it cost if I were to get that done? He goes, oh, that would be about $5,000 total. I'm like, the car's not worth that much. Like, I'm going to drive this thing till it drops, man. I just... Ugh. Do you fly fish?
I do not. I don't fish at all, but I grew up in Minnesota and I don't fish. I know that's hard to believe, but
oh my God.
I have said that when I retire, I am going to take up fishing. Regardless of where I retire, I'm going to take up fishing.
Minnesota and don't fish?
Yep.
I mean, God, you must be like a communist.
I think there's only 3 of us in Minnesota that didn't fish.
I think so, because I had a neighbor that came from Minnesota, and it's like land of 1,000 lakes, right? Everybody has a boat, and they fish, and then they ice fish.
Have you ever done that?
No.
That's an experience.
It looks like it'd be fun.
Well, it's a little bit different than it used to be. I remember as a kid going, you know, with some friends going out in their ice houses, and it was basically a tent, you know, like an old canvas, you know, army kind of tent, and you know they were cold, but now my brother and his friends used to every year go ice fishing on Mille Lacs, and you know they would have, you know, satellite dish and you know, microwave oven, and I mean, it was so comfy. They would sit in there in shorts and a t-shirt, and you know, read and drink beer, and you know, fishing was just kind of the afterthought. So, I think depending on how you do it, you can be roughing it a little bit more, or it can be pretty comfortable.
Yeah, I was never a big fisherman, so to speak. I never had the patience for like sitting on the side of a lake waiting for something to happen. But fly fishing, you're constantly moving. So that helps a little bit. And then you start thinking, wow, this is really relaxing out in the middle of nowhere. And just the sound of the brooks bubbling, and it's you against that little fish. It's kind of nice. Now, it's better when you have a guide that tells you how to do it. And
part of the problem in Colorado is like with everything else, whether it's camping or skiing or anything else, it doesn't matter when you go, you got to fight traffic, and there's a billion people, and that's just demoralizing.
And fly fishing, you got to get up like 4 o'clock in the morning to get there. It's it's. I mean, I really do enjoy it. I wish we could do it. And when was it? I guess it was 4th of July. It was in 20. I guess it was right when COVID was started, so 2020. And we go up to this Devil Thumbs Ranch up by Granby, I think it was. And Kristen got me these new Sims waders. I mean, these are like the freaking Cadillac of waders. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go do this. And got my, I bought her for her birthday a fishing pole. I was having a new rod and reel for Orvis, kind of pretty nice stuff. And, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Like, oh, got you a fishing pole for your birthday. Congratulations. And I got one for me, too. You caught?
I got the video of the dog.
Oh, you got the video of the dog? Okay. I'm going to finish the story, then I'll tell. And so we're getting ready to pack up. I swear to God, true story. Fishing poles have been used like twice. And packing up everything, got the rods in my hand, and they're tall. They go up to the thing. And there's a door that kind of swings, kind of closed, pretty heavy. Nice hotel up to Devil Thumbs Ranch. If you've been there, I highly recommend it. Take your lovely wife.
That's
up
a
there.
very good idea.
And as I'm going through, I got the fishing poles. I'm going out the door, and the pole's not all the way through. And the door just, boom,
Snap.
closes it. And just snapped, clean cut right off the top. So I'm thinking, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I just spent money on the poles. I have no one to blame but myself, and I'm feeling like an idiot. And then I had to go to the fly fishing store and say, do you guys have a warranty? Can I buy this end? Really stupid. And the lady was so nice. She's like, she set up these rod and reels, and she knew everything about fly fishing, and she's great. And I'm like, I'm really embarrassed. I can't believe I did this. And she goes, it happens all the time. She goes, it usually they get hit on fans.
Oh,
In the
yeah.
room, people hit them on fans. She goes, it happens all the time. That's why you can buy pieces of these. I'm like, okay, great. So I didn't feel so bad.
Happens to us city slickers more often than.
But I felt so stupid. I'm like, I knew I should have broken this down instead of just keeping it all together. But I had to tell Kristen, and I was like, you're not going to believe this, but I just ruined your birthday again. Snapped it. All right, let's see this video, Frank, and then we'll call it a night. Okay, let's take a look at this. All right, watch the video, Mark, right up there in the big fancy screen at the airport hangar.
He's already got his gun out.
He doesn't like dogs, and I don't know what that kind of dog that is. I don't think it's like a pit bull or something, but it could be a pit bull, but it's a puppy. I mean, look at the little white dog there, a little ankle biter.
Yeah. Yeah, neither one of them looks horribly intimidating.
So the dog goes out there, and I don't know if it sounds on here, but there's like
Wow.
8 shots. Boom,
Yeah,
boom, 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 boom.
he just did. You could see his reaction. And then he just called on the radio that he did it.
Yep.
Wow. It's very difficult to Monday morning quarterback cop stuff. I've done a couple of news interviews on cases that I had to work on involving use of force stuff. It's funny because some stuff you can sort of understand how it happens because you've been in those shoes. But there's other ones when you look at them and you just go, that should have never happened.
Yeah.
That kind of looks like one of those.
That's one of those where it's like,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
City of Miami probably needs to get their checkbook ready, huh?
Yeah, just pay now. Just don't fight that one. No.
But dogs are like children to lots of people.
Oh, absolutely they are. But, they can also inflict serious damage. Now, that one didn't look like it had any intent to do that.
You can't really see what took place behind the
fence.
fence.
Yeah.
So we'll probably never know. But like I said, until you've walked 1,000 miles in their shoes, how can you say, you could have a history where I've had dogs attack me, like you said you've had
Right.
dogs,
Right.
attack you. So, all right. Well, Mama Pink, bad cop with his gun. I'm usually not on the side of law enforcement, but no. They're tiny dogs killed for no reason, etc. Don't beep with animals.
Yeah, that looked bad.
People, I got people all fired up. I don't find pit bull breeds gross. Sometimes I like dogs more than I like my family. That's funny. He didn't even let the owner get him. The owners walked out after that. But it looked like they were more surprised, like, oh my God, he just shot my dog. So
I'm sure. Yeah.
it's a sad situation. All right. Well, it's 9:30 already. Can you
Holy
believe
cow.
it? Wow. Time flies when you have a good cigar.
I was going to say, that was
good
an enjoyable
conversation.
evening.
I hope everyone else enjoyed it as much as I did.
I had a great time.
Thanks for coming back. You're always welcome. We'll do it again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Whether here or back in the studio, we'll do something.
All right.
And looks like I got a new murder case. So you want to do a murder case with me?
I would love to.
All right.
Thank you.
Looks like it's just getting started. So
Good.
may have to take a trip real soon to go meet our new client.
Good.
All right. Want to thank everybody. Thank Frank and Julie for staying around late. Even though Julie didn't have a cigar, even though I think she really wanted a cigar, we won't hold it against her.
Could have had 4 of them.
But see, just a good cigar, good conversation. You can't go wrong.
No.
You just can't go wrong with a good cigar.
It's very relaxing.
All right. So I want to thank everybody for watching, tuning in for Crime Talk After Dark. Thank you for being here. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Tell a friend. I think we just went over, 204,000 today. I saw as I was leaving the office. We were at 203 something, and now we're at 204,000 subscribers.
Holy cow.
Problem is we're always demonetized.
Oh, well.
That's why I got to keep my day job going.
Yeah, I guess we shouldn't have cigars.
I know cigar probably demonetized us.
Yeah.
It's not all the talk about guns and police and bad things. It's all the other stuff. But anyway, it is what it is. Eventually, somebody will watch it, enough of it that we'll make enough money and we can quit our day job and just sit around the hangars and talk about cases. Wouldn't that be
be fun.
Bad gig.
That would.
Maybe we can get Joe Rogan on here. We can have a conversation with him.
Oh, he'd be fun.
So, all right. Thank everybody for watching. Thank you. We'll see you next time on Crime Talk. And for all those who stuck with us throughout the evening, have a wonderful night. We'll see you next time on Crime Talk.